Chapter 1034. I've brought you the person you want. Now, you should give me back Zhu Wu's blood essence. Jiufeng grabbed Liu Nianling's body and said to Gohan, "Wait, why is Liu Nianling still in a coma? Did you guys do something to her body? Did you put some kind of poison in her body? I want Liu Nianling in good condition, not Liu Nianling in a coma." Gohan said harshly, "Don't worry, we didn't do anything to her body. We just fed her Xiang Lu's blood. Xiang Lu's blood can easily hypnotize mortals. She killed 5 senior magi by herself. If she's awake, we can't keep her, so we can only do this." Jiufeng explained hurriedly. "Then wake her up and we'll exchange," said Gohan. He thought it was a simple request, but Jiufeng frowned deeply after hearing it. There's no antidote for Xiang Lu's blood. She can only wake up after the effect of the drug has worn off. Xiang Lu fed her 100 drops of blood just in case. Ordinary people need at least 10 years to wake up. Although Lu Nian's physique is extraordinary, it will take at least 10 days for her to wake up. How can I wake her up in such a short time? That's easy. I've brought a medical pod with me. You can put Liu Nianling in it. As long as she's fine, I'll return Zhu Wu's blood essence to you. That's the beginning of the deal." Gohan put forward a reasonable suggestion. Okay. Jiufeng was anxious to get back Zhu Wu's blood essence, so she agreed to Gohan's request. Therefore, Gohan quickly took out his medical pod from his dimensional pocket and opened the lid. Just as Jiufeng was about to place Liu Nianling's body into the medical pod, an accident happened. Phoenix, Lady Jiufeng, Her Majesty Jiufeng, Heavenly Venerable Jiufeng, you can't. Heavenly Venerable Jiufeng, you can't. Nurachi, who was in charge of the onlookers, suddenly broke the good atmosphere of the transaction. He hurriedly ran to Jiufeng's side and said loudly. Probably because he didn't know how to address Jiufeng, Nurachi changed several titles in a row until he felt that it was more appropriate to use the word Heavenly Master. "Why not?" Jiufeng asked. "Emperor Jiufeng doesn't know that this despicable person is lying to you. When I spoke to him just now, he admitted that he was lying to you. He doesn't want to return Zhu Wu's blood essence to you at all. He's just doing it for his woman." Nurachi betrayed Gohan without hesitation. "Heavenly Venerable, think about it. Since he can tamper with the glass coffin, he must be able to tamper with this glass coffin. Once you put his woman into the glass coffin, I'm afraid this glass coffin will immediately return to his hands. Emperor Jiufeng, you will lose everything." Nurachi didn't know the name of the medical pod, so he could only use the name glass coffin based on its appearance. It had to be said that the name glass coffin was very appropriate. The medical pod looked like a coffin made of glass. Human is what he said true. Jiufeng immediately withdrew Liu Nianling and stared at Gohan. Sigh. Hearing Jiufeng's question, Gohan couldn't help but sigh. I wanted to solve it in a simpler way, but it seems that I still have to resort to violence. Hearing this, Jiufeng felt that something was wrong and immediately wanted to escape in the direction where she had disappeared. Although Jiufeng knew very well that she couldn't beat Gohan, she thought that she could at least run away. As long as she tried her best to escape, Gohan definitely wouldn't be able to catch up with her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to escape from Gohan's hands so many times. But Jiufeng never expected that when she took a step, Gohan's figure had already appeared behind her. Before Jiufeng had time to attack, her bird claw took a hit from Gohan's sword. The golden and extraordinarily sharp phoenix claw was instantly cut off by Gohan's juicy sword. Together with Liu Nianling, they were directly snatched away by Gohan. Yes, the whole process was so simple and easy. It only took less than 100 words of description for Gohan to snatch Liu Nianling back from Jiufeng's claws. When Gohan first entered Shanhai Pass and faced the first great wizard Quafu, it took him 5 chapters with a total of more than 15,000 words to finish typing. And in the end, Gohan didn't really defeat Quafu. It was just that Kwafu was afraid of the bullet in Gu Xuanwu's hand, so he had to let her escape. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Gohan's strength had improved in the past 6 months. "I will kill you!" When Jiufeng saw that her only hostage had been snatched away by Gohan, she was instantly burned with anger. If Liu Ling was still in her hands, then Jiufeng would still have the capital to bargain with Gohan. But now that Liu Ling had been snatched away by Gohan, Jiufeng had lost the capital to trade with Gohan. Gohan would never return Xianming's Zhu Wu blood essence to her. At the same time, it was impossible for Gohan to keep a great wizard alive. He would definitely kill her. Since that was the case, Jiufeng couldn't care less about the difference in strength between her and Gohan. She turned around and fought with Gohan with all her might. But it was all in vain. Nurachi, who was on the ground, could only see that the human and Jiufeng were fighting in the underground palace. Not only could they fight in the air, but they were also moving so fast that Nurachi's eyes couldn't see anything. Nurachi could only see shadows swaying in front of him, but he had no idea how the two were fighting. At the same time, all kinds of invisible energy kept exploding around, and the aftermath of the battle blew up the entire underground palace. The whole ground instantly became full of potholes, just like the surface of the moon. Is this an immortal technique or a Buddhist technique? Is this guy really a human? Nurachi's brain was not enough to process it. He thought that even though his 100,000 8 banners iron cavalry were still here, it would be as easy as taking something out of his pocket if this human wanted to kill him. It could even be said that it was not impossible for this human to defeat his 100,000 8 banners iron cavalry alone. In the end, the divine bird will definitely win, Nurachi secretly said in his heart. Just by looking at Jiufeng's phoenix-like appearance, Nurachi felt that the winner would definitely be Jiufeng. This was also the reason why he had betrayed Gohan just now. At the same time, he could imagine that because of his betrayal just now, Gohan had to fight with Jiufeng. In the end, if Gohan won the battle, then he would definitely be dead. So Nurachi kept thinking that Jiufeng would win the final victory in his heart. But this time, Nurachi was completely disappointed. In just a minute or two, the battle was over. Jiufeng, who was as brave and invincible as a phoenix, fell to the ground, with dozens of deep bloody holes in her body. "You will regret this," Jiu Feng, who was on his last breath, said unwillingly before his body turned into a pool of blood. According to past experience, this pool of blood should immediately merge into the soil and then return to Zhu Wu's blood essence. However, although Jiufeng's body turned into a pool of blood this time, it could not merge into the ground. Instead, it spontaneously condensed in the middle and finally turned into a pure black blood bead that floated on the ground. Yes, the mysterious underworld Zhu Wu's blood essence has already been surrounded by the Emperor blood and has lost direct contact with the ground. As the Xianming tribe's Grand Wizard, Jiufeng can no longer return to Zhu Wu's blood essence to revive, so she can only condense herself into a blood bead in the end. Gohan said happily as he looked at this blood bead. This meant that what he had trapped in the test tube was indeed the Xianming tribe's Zhu Wu's blood essence. Grand Wizard Jiufeng had also lost her ability to revive indefinitely and could only condense herself into a blood bead in the end. Unless Jiufeng's blood bead could eventually return to Zhu Wu's blood essence, Grand Wizard Jiufeng would never be able to revive. Jiufeng's blood bead was not like Zhu Wu's blood essence, which could only be absorbed by a test tube filled with Emperor blood. An ordinary test tube directly absorbed Jiufeng's blood bead, and then Gohan placed it deep into his dimensional pocket. This also completely announced that Grand Wizard Jiufeng had cut off all contact with this world, and could no longer be revived as a threat to humanity. "Kill me if you want. I have already died once. I am not afraid of dying again." Seeing that Gohan had finished dealing with Jiufeng, Nurhasai knew that he was finished. Gohan would definitely not let him off for betraying him. At this moment, Nurhasai could only pray that Gohan would be merciful and stab him to death with a sword instead of using cruel methods such as cutting his skin, pulling out his tendons, tearing his body apart, or chopping him into minced meat, because this was how Nurhasai dealt with his enemies. Why did you betray me just now? Gohan was not in a hurry to kill Nurhasai. Instead, he asked curiously, logically speaking, we are the same kind. Why did you help a bird to harm me? Is there a need to say more? You, human, dared to threaten me just now. Of course, I want to avenge you. Besides, if I help the Phoenix see through your plot, the Phoenix will definitely be grateful to me. Maybe it can send me safely back to the descendants of the great Jin dynasty. At that time, my guardian bird will help the great Jin dynasty to conquer the world again. At that time, I will still be the emperor of the 9 states. Because he knew that he could not live, Nurhasai did not hide anything. He directly told Liu Liang all his thoughts. Gohan did not know how to evaluate the founding emperor of the great Jin dynasty. At this time, he still wanted to unify the world and become the emperor of the 9 states. In a way, this was also a very praiseworthy thing. What Nurhasai never expected was that in the end, Gohan did not kill him. Instead, he left him aside and was busy putting the woman into the glass coffin. Could it be that Gohan's woman was already dead and he was now planning to bury her? Nurhasai thought inexplicably. Chapter 1035. Where am I? Liu Ling slowly opened her eyes and realized that she was in the medical bay. Memories from before she fainted kept surfacing in her mind. Only then did she slowly recall, by the way, I was captured by the Wu people. Liu Ling could not help but feel heartbroken at the thought of this. She was the only member of the Liu family who had been captured by the Wu people. This time, she had completely embarrassed the Liu family. But why am I in the medical bay? Could it be that the amulet has been activated? Oh no, doesn't that mean that the entire Shanghai Pass is going to? Liu Ling did not dare to think further. She immediately reached out to touch the amulet around her neck and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Great, the amulet is still here. However, Liu Ling was immediately puzzled. Since the amulet was not activated, how did she get sent into the medical bay? Could it be that he saved me? Liu Ling recalled a figure that she missed. In the 2 months before she was captured, Liu Ling had contacted Gohan several times, trying to find him to resolve the misunderstanding in Guanghui Amusement Park. However, Gohan did not reply to Liu Ling at all. This made Liu Ling feel quite sad and sad. She could not help but curl up in her bed and cry secretly many nights. Liu Ling thought that Gohan would never forgive her in this lifetime. However, Liu Ling did not know that Gohan had been in the game for the past 2 months. Occasionally, he would come out of the game to deal with some urgent daily affairs. After that, he would immediately return to the game to receive training from Kenzu. How could he find time to meet Liu Ling? In fact, Gohan did not blame Liu Ling from the beginning to the end. The mistake was caused by Kenzu. It had nothing to do with Liu Ling. While Liu Ling was letting her imagination run wild, the medical bay's lid suddenly opened by itself. Then, she heard a familiar voice. Miss Ling, when are you going to stop sleeping? It's time to wake up. Got it. It's just that my body is a little numb. Liu Ling climbed out of the medical bay with a blushing face. She saw Gohan looking at her with a smile that did not seem like a smile. Immediately, Liu Ling, who was filled with shyness and joy, felt a sweetness in her heart. It was still he who would save her without hesitation when she was in danger. It was just like in the dream back then. Thank you, Liu Ling said to Gohan. No need to thank me. With our relationship, is there still a need to say thank you? Leng Qingqiu patted Liu Ling's shoulder, looking like a good brother. Such an attitude made Liu Ling feel both happy and melancholic at the same time. He was happy because Gohan no longer bore a grudge against Leng Qingqiu for what happened in the Radiant Paradise. He was depressed because of Ling Qingqiu's brotherly attitude towards him. At this moment, Fleeting Time's heart suddenly surged with an impulse to not be brothers with Ling Qingqiu anymore. Of course, Liuyan Ling only thought like this. She didn't have the courage to really say it out loud. Where is this place? Why does it seem like a tomb? In order to ease her embarrassment, Liuyan Ling looked at the surrounding environment and asked casually. You're right. This is indeed a tomb. Liuyan Ling didn't think that she would hit the nail on the head. This really was a tomb. Then who is this Yuan Ko? Liuyan Ling saw Nurhasai at the same time. Originally, Liuyan Ling had always killed Yuan Ko when she saw him, but thinking that since Gohan let this Yuan Ko stand here, it must be a reason not to kill him, so she didn't do it again. Nurhasai didn't know that he had escaped a disaster. It must be known that if Liuyan Ling wanted to kill him, the speed at which she killed him was not much slower than stepping on an ant under her feet. I am the great Jin dynasty's great ancestor Nurhasai, you little girl see me. Ignore him, just pretend that he doesn't exist. Before Nurhasai could finish his words, he was directly rebutted by Gohan. Nurhasai was so angry that he really wanted to take out his knife and cut Gohan in half. Liuyan Ling still wanted to say something more to Gohan, but at this time, she heard an electronic beep. Only then did Liuyan Ling realize that there was actually a medical pod here. And this beep was the sound of another medical pod after it had finished its work. Sir Yaoguang, you are here too? When Yaoguang stood up from the medical pod, Liuyan Ling said in surprise. She didn't expect that the other medical pod contained the Taiying garrison's guardian Yaoguang. Miss Ling, why are you here? It's great that you are fine. I was really worried that something would happen to you in the hands of the Wu people. Forget it, these are not important anymore, Yaoguang said with great joy when he saw Liuyan Ling appear in front of him. Gohan, you are here too? What exactly happened here? Why am I here? And why are you here? When Yaoguang saw Gohan, he immediately poured out all his questions. Here's what happened. Gohan briefly told Yaoguang and Liuyan Ling what happened after Liuyan Ling was captured. The two of them instantly fell into a huge shock. I didn't expect so many things to happen after I was poisoned. I didn't expect the Wu people to launch a surprise attack on the Taiying garrison, and I didn't expect Yi Fan to be a traitor. I really can't imagine how terrible the human race's situation would be if all this had happened. Yaoguang patted Gohan's shoulder emotionally. Fortunately, I didn't misjudge you. Gohan, you are indeed the person who can save the entire human race. Fleeting Time's face was filled with joy as he looked at Gohan. The person I like is the best. Yep, that was the feeling. It's not that simple. Gohan smiled and took out the test tube containing Zhu Wu's blood essence. Thanks to you, Yaoguang, we also found the place where the Wu people had hidden Zhu Wu's blood essence for hundreds of years and obtained the Xianming tribe's blood essence. From now on, the Wu people will no longer have 12 great sorcerers. They will forever have one less great sorcerer. The 12 Wu people's tribes will also forever lack one, and the Xianming tribe will forever be removed from the Shanhai Pass. This is the Xianming tribe's Zhu Wu blood essence. Yaoguang and Liuyan Ling looked at the drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence in the test tube, which was struggling with the Emperor's blood. All sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. Because of this drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence, countless heroes of the human race had died at the hands of the Xianming tribe, which had been nurtured by this drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence. Gohan, Gohan. Yaoguang couldn't help but sigh. I don't even know how to evaluate your contribution this time. Even if I gave you 10 million hero coins, it wouldn't even amount to 1/10 of your contribution. The Shanhai Pass reward and punishment regulations have never recorded the rewards for completely destroying a Wu people's tribe. Looks like this matter will have to be handed over to the Sword Commission. It's time to give them a headache. If they can't give me a satisfactory reward, I will throw this Zhu Wu's blood essence to the dogs and see if I can cultivate a heavenly dog tribe. Gohan was joking. Of course, he wouldn't feed Zhu Wu's blood essence to the dogs, let alone cultivate a heavenly dog tribe. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble for the human race? In that case, Gohan, we should go back. Otherwise, there will be big problems without you at the Taiying garrison. Yao Guang sighed. Also, I should pass the position of Lunar Guardian to you. I really don't have the right to sit in that position anymore. There's no hurry to go back. Gohan shook his head. We have only obtained 1 drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence. There are still 11 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence, which is equivalent to weakening 1/12 of the Wu people's strength. Now, while all the great sorcerers are dead and unable to protect Zhu Wu's blood essence, we can take away the rest of Zhu Wu's blood essence. This way, Shanhai Pass can be completely restored to peace, and we can be considered to have made a great contribution to the human race. That makes sense. Yao Guang nodded. But do you know where the rest of Zhu Wu's blood essence is hidden? That's simple. Since the Xianming tribe's Zhu Wu's blood essence is hidden in the Qing dynasty's Taizu Narachi's underground palace, it can be predicted that the rest of Zhu Wu's blood essence must be hidden in the underground palace of the other Qing dynasty emperors. We just need to find the underground palace of those tombs, and we might be able to find the rest of Zhu Wu's blood essence. Gohan smiled. Good idea. The rest of Zhu Wu's blood essence must be hidden there. This is a golden opportunity, we can't miss it. Yao Guang immediately said excitedly. Lian Ling also nodded. However, Nurachi, who was watching all this from a corner, felt very uncomfortable. He was actually watching a group of people discuss digging up his own descendants' grave. This feeling was really indescribable. Nurachi really wanted to stop Gohan and the others from going overboard, but he could not help but tremble when he recalled the battle between Gohan and Jiufeng. He could not say a word. Looks like we still have to leave this underground palace first. It will be more convenient to find the other tombs from the outside, Yao Guang said. That's not necessary. I just saw Jiufeng disappear from this underground palace, but after a while, she appeared with Ling's medical pod. Therefore, I suspect that this underground palace must have an entrance to the other underground palaces, or a teleportation array, or something like a void gate. Let's look around carefully. We will definitely be able to find the entrance to the next underground palace. Okay. No problem. Yao Guang and Lian Ling nodded. Therefore, the 3 of them split up to look for the next entrance. Unfortunately, Gohan almost turned the entire underground palace upside down, but he still could not find the entrance. However, Yao Guang had an unexpected reward. When Yao Guang was searching, he accidentally found a small wall in the underground palace that was different from the other walls. The other walls were covered in dust, but this wall was clean, as if it had been cleaned frequently. There's the smell of Wu people's qi and blood on the wall. In the end, Yao Guang's research on the Wu people was more in-depth. He sniffed the wall and found that this wall actually had the smell of Wu people's qi and blood. It must be the Wu people's blood spell array. Yao Guang said happily. The Wu people must have drawn a blood spell array for teleportation on this wall. That's why Jiufeng disappeared in front of you in an instant. We just need to find a way to activate this blood spell array, then we can go to the next underground palace. But how do we activate the Wu people's blood spell array? Lian Ling said in distress. Not only does the Wu people's blood spell array need the qi and blood of a senior witch, it also needs the Wu people's witchcraft. It's impossible for us humans to activate this blood spell array. Chapter 1036. We have the blood essence of the Wu people. Gohan took out the blood pearl that Jiufeng had condensed. This is the blood essence of Jiufeng. It's perfect for opening the blood spell formation. Yes, but the blood pearl alone is not enough. Without the secret incantation of the Wu people, we still can't open the blood spell formation, Lian Ling said as she rubbed her head. This question had indeed stumped everyone present, including Gohan. The Wu people's blood spell formation could only be opened by the Wu people's secret incantation. However, the Wu people's secret incantation was naturally the power that only the Wu people possessed. Even if Gohan's strength was increased by 1,000 or 10,000 times, he would not be able to open the blood spell formation. Gohan, I remember hearing a saying before. I'm not sure if it's true, Yao Guang said after hesitating for a while. Whether it's true or not, let's hear it first, Gohan said. Alright. I remember that the previous guardian of the Taiyang garrison was an expert in religious studies before he became a sword bearer. He especially liked to study the shamanism of the Qing dynasty. After he came to Shanhai Pass, he realized that the shamanism of the Qing dynasty was actually similar to the witchcraft of the Wu people. The incantations, and the process of casting the spell were almost identical. Therefore, before the guardian of the Taiyang garrison left, he told me that he suspected the shamanism was actually an extension of the Wu people. As the shamanism was a country of the Qing dynasty, the entire royal family might be the blood of the Wu people. This is because only the Wu people can use the witchcraft of the Wu people. Only the Manchu people can become the priests of the shamanism and learn the various secret incantations of the shamanism. Yao Guang revealed a shocking secret. You're saying that the Aizen Zhoro clan might be the blood of the Wu people? Gohan's eyes lit up. That's right. We've had a lot of contact with the Wu people in Shanhai Pass, so we've more or less learned some of the Wu people's history. In the Antiquity era, after the Wu people were defeated by the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan, they took the initiative to intermarry with us humans, hiding the Wu people's bloodline in the human bloodline. This way, the human race can't truly kill the Wu people, giving the Wu people a chance to rise again. The great shaman of the Wu people, Fei Lian, was actually a physician of the Shang dynasty. If it wasn't for the destruction of the Shang dynasty by the Zhou dynasty, Fei Lian would not have revealed his true form as a great shaman. Later on, the Fei Lian clan was infested in the area of present-day Gansu and Shaanxi, and gradually developed into the most powerful country of the Warring States period, the Qin Kingdom. Later on, when the Qin state conquered the world, Emperor Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng, who carried the bloodline of the Wu people, became the human emperor of the human race. Yingzheng was a mixed blood of the human race and the Wu people, and the bloodline of the Wu people was even stronger than that of the human race. However, because of this, under the instigation of the human race, the Qin kingdom fell after a few decades. In order to ensure that the bloodline of the Qin kingdom would not be passed down, the human race killed all the bloodline of the Qin kingdom, and supported the pure-blooded Liu Bang to succeed the throne. However, the bloodline of the Wu people is still hidden among the human race, so it's not strange that the Manchu people are the inheritors of the Wu people's bloodline. The Wu people have never given up on the human emperor's position. At this point, Yao Guang finally finished. I understand what you mean. Gohan nodded knowingly, and then looked at Nirachi, who was a little confused. It seems that I was right not to kill him. There is indeed some unexpected joy. Therefore, under Gohan's order, Nirachi reluctantly came to the side of Gohan and the other two. Let me ask you, are you a member of the Nuzan clan, the bloodline of the Wu people? Gohan asked with a frown. What bloodline of the Wu people? Today is the first time I've heard of the name Wu people. The Nuzan clan is the Nuzan clan, and has nothing to do with that strange Wu people, Nirachi said with a look of disgust. Obviously, he was very proud of his clan. That's not strange. Ever since the Qin dynasty failed, the Wu people knew that they couldn't fight against the human race, so they had to hide their identity. In order to prevent their bloodline from being discovered, the Wu people didn't even tell their descendants about their bloodline identity. Only when all the descendants of the Wu people thought that they were real humans could this secret be completely protected. At this point, Yao Guang paused. So it's not strange that the Nuzan people don't know that they are the Wu people. As long as they use the secret techniques of the shaman sect, They will know whether they are the Wu people or not. After saying that, Yaoguang turned to Nurachi and asked, "Do you know the secret techniques of the shaman sect?" "How could I know that kind of ghost god technique? Those are the things of the priest. I am the son of heaven. How could I learn these inferior ghost god techniques?" Nurachi said coldly. "Since you don't know, then kill him." Yaoguang sighed and said disappointedly, "That's right. I thought he would be of some use. Now it seems that we can just kill him." Guhan nodded and drew out his Juzi sword, ready to kill Nurachi with one strike. Wait. Nurachi saw this and immediately panicked. He quickly said, "Although I don't know the secret techniques, I have seen the priests cast them. I can imitate them and maybe I can succeed." "What a joke! How can you use the secret techniques of the Wu people just by imitating others? I think we should just kill him." Fleeting Time Ling said disdainfully. As the successor of the Fleeting Time clan, he had access to a vast number of books in the Fleeting Time clan. He could be said to be the most knowledgeable about secret techniques among humans. She had never heard of a secret technique that could be imitated by imitating others without the mental cultivation method. This was too ridiculous. "It's fine. Let him try it. If he doesn't succeed, it won't be too late to kill him," Guhan said to Liuyan Ling with a smile. However, this smile instantly made Nurachi shiver. In fact, Nurachi himself knew very well that the secret arts of shamanism were not something that could be learned by copying. He could only pray in his heart that the spirits of his ancestors would help him and help him through this disaster. Thus, after placing Jiufeng's blood bead on the wall engraved with the blood formation of the Wu people, our new shaman high priest Nurachi began to use the secret techniques of shamanism for the first time in his life. In Nurhasai's memory, when the shaman priests cast spells, they all danced in front of him like madmen, shaking their heads like lions' heads until Nurhasai's eyes were dazzled. The spell was cast, but in fact, Nurhasai still didn't remember anything. However, Nurachi never expected that he would need to use the secret techniques of shamanism that he had never cared about. The only thing Nurachi could do was to imitate the priests and dance like a madman. How could this be useful? Liuyan Ling shook her head disdainfully. Even her dog looked better than Nurachi when it danced. What kind of secret technique of shamanism was this? But something magical happened. Just as Liuyan Ling shook her head disdainfully, the formation on the wall began to emit a blood-red light. The thick wall instantly turned into something like a water film. As long as one took a step forward, he would be able to reach the world on the other side of the wall. "It's open. The door is open. My spell has succeeded." It turns out that the secret techniques of shamanism are real. I can also become the high priest of shamanism. I can also cast spells. Seeing this, Nurachi, who had been on tenterhooks, began to laugh loudly. The feeling of being reborn after a disaster was really great. The feeling of having spells was really great. "You go in first." Yaoguang was cautious. Although the portal had been opened, Yaoguang still did not feel at ease and let Nurachi in first. After finding that half of Nurachi's body was exposed this time, Yaoguang was the second to enter the other side of the portal. Guhan and Liuyan Ling followed closely behind and entered the portal. On the other side of the portal was also an underground palace of a mausoleum, but the decoration of this underground palace was much more gorgeous than that of Nurachi's underground palace. There were only various kinds of carvings in Nurachi's underground palace. But this mausoleum was filled with all kinds of exquisite carvings, and was filled with all kinds of rare treasures. There were even skeletons in some corners. These skeletons seemed to be the skeletons of women. They did not look old, at most 20 or 30 years old before they died. They were dressed in clothes that were neither gorgeous nor shabby. It seemed that these pitiful women were funerary objects, meant to be buried with the dead emperor. "Who is it? Who is it? Hurry up and take me out, I'm going crazy here." Suddenly, a pleasantly surprised voice came from the other end of the underground palace. Soon after, another person wearing a dragon robe and a crown ran out. Looking at this person's appearance, he was actually 40% to 50% similar to Nurhasai. Obviously, this person should be Nurhasai's bloodline descendant. Ag. Is that you, Ag? Seeing this new emperor, Nurachi instantly burst into tears and rushed up to hug the emperor. Father! Father, why are you here? Didn't you already? Ag rubbed his eyes in disbelief. He could not believe that the person hugging him was his father. Obviously, this Ag was Nurachi's successor, Qing Taizong Huang Taiji, Nurachi's 8th son. It's a long story. Actually, Ag, did you also come back to life? Nurachi hugged his son and cried. He never thought that he would be able to see his biological son after 1,300 years. Father, did you also come back to life? Huang Taiji was not stupid. He immediately guessed that he and his father had actually come back to life. That's interesting. A kind father and a filial son. Seeing this, Liu Ling mocked him without holding back. You little girl, how dare you speak rudely to me? I'm going to push you out of the Meridian Gate and behead you. Huang Taiji had never been trained by Gohan, so he still maintained the aura of an emperor. As soon as he opened his mouth, he wanted to push Liu Ling out of the Meridian Gate and behead her. Fortunately, Nurachi, who had been trained by Gohan, was with him. He immediately grabbed Huang Taiji's hand and covered Huang Taiji's mouth, bowed to Gohan, and then took his son to hide in a corner far away, telling him what had happened to him. Chapter 1037. Things went very smoothly. Gohan successfully found the second drop of Zhu Wu's essence blood in the coffin in the underground palace of Huang Taiji's Zhao Mausoleum. Next to this drop of essence blood was a bright red blood bead. Obviously, this blood bead belonged to a dead great wizard. Like Jiufeng, he had turned into a blood bead after his death. However, he successfully returned to the side of Zhu Wu's essence blood and began to absorb the essence of Zhu Wu's essence blood, preparing to be reborn again. Unfortunately, he was too unlucky to have met a freak like Gohan. Therefore, this great wizard's blood bead could only be stored away by Gohan, along with Zhu Wu's essence blood. From then on, he lost the chance to be reborn. Next, Gohan and the others once again spread out in the underground palace to look for a new blood formation. Finally, they easily found this blood formation in a corner. Then, under the humiliated gaze of Huang Taiji, Nurachi began to dance the shamanic secret skill again. However, this time, Nurachi did not succeed. No matter how hard he danced, he could not open this blood formation. Could it be that only the master of this mausoleum can open this blood formation by using a secret skill? Liu Ling put forward a very constructive suggestion. Therefore, under the pressure of the sword in Yao Guang's hand, Nurachi had no choice but to randomly teach the shamanic secret skill he had just performed to Huang Taiji. After learning it a few times in great humiliation, Huang Taiji also began to dance crazily. However, no matter how you looked at it, Nurachi and Huang Taiji were dancing two different dances. This was not the same shamanic secret skill at all. However, something miraculous happened. Huang Taiji's inexplicable dance actually opened the blood formation and opened the way to the next mausoleum. As Gohan expected, the other end of the blood formation was connected to the Qing Shaoling Mausoleum, which was the underground palace of Huang Taiji's son, Aizen Giorgio Luo Fulin. Similarly, Gohan also discovered Yuan Ko, Aizen Giorgio and Luo Fulin, who had just arrived in this world, in the underground palace of the Shaoling Mausoleum. It could be said that the trio of Nurachi, grandfather and grandson, had been gathered together. However, Fu Lin was not as excited as expected after meeting his father and grandfather. He just looked at Huang Taiji and Nurachi timidly. His attitude was more of fear. This was not surprising. When Fu Lin ascended the throne, he was only 6 years old. He did not have much of an impression of his father, Huang Taiji. At that time, there were no photos, so Fu Lin naturally did not recognize his biological father. As for Huang Taiji, his thoughts were rather complicated. He had seen Fu Lin when he was young and liked him a lot. However, the problem was that Fu Lin was now a young man in his 40s. His appearance was very different from when he was young. Hence, Huang Taiji did not feel that there was anything intimate between them. What was even more strange was that Fu Lin's head was completely bald. If he was not wearing a yellow robe, Huang Taiji would really think that he was a monk. However, they were grandfather and grandson after all. After confirming each other's identities, they gradually became intimate. Then, Huang Taiji and Narachi seized the time to ask Fu Lin what had happened when he was the emperor. After hearing Fu Lin say that he had completely destroyed the southern Ming dynasty, killed all the emperors of the Ming dynasty, and truly unified the whole central plains, Huang Taiji and Narachi were so happy that they danced with joy. Soon, Huang Taiji and Narachi began to wonder why Fu Lin was bald. They wondered if he had lost his hair or something. Fu Lin could not say anything. Instead, it was Liunyan Ling who added, "I heard that he became a monk in the end. I don't know if he died in the temple." Huang Taiji and Narachi immediately stared at Fu Lin sternly. Fu Lin had no choice but to tell them his scandal. It turned out that after concubine Dongo's death, Fu Lin lost all hope and went to Mount Wutai to become a monk. In the end, he died on Mount Wutai, but his body was transported back to the Shaoling Mausoleum for burial. Huang Taiji and Narachi were so angry that they immediately kicked Fu Lin's butt. They cursed, "How could the Aizen-Joro family have such a useless person like you? How could you become a monk for a little woman? You're the most useless of all." Being scolded by his father and grandfather, Fu Lin did not even dare to raise his head. He could only shrink in the corner and shiver. On the other side, Guhan and the other two had also successfully found Zhu Wu's essence blood beads, and the blood formation of the next mausoleum in Fu Lin's mausoleum. This time, Guhan still let Narachi try to use the shamanic secret technique first, then let Huang Taiji do it. In the end, both of them could not open the blood formation in the Shaoling Mausoleum. Sure enough, in the end, Fu Lin had to use the shaman's secret technique. However, there was an interlude in the middle. That was, Fu Lin refused to use the shaman's secret technique or perform the shaman dance. Fu Lin was willing to abandon his status to become a monk. Obviously, Fu Lin was a very devout monk. As a devout monk, Fu Lin would certainly not dance the shamanic dance. It would blaspheme his Buddha. Even when Yaoguang put his sword on Fu Lin's neck, Fu Lin refused. Yaoguang used Huang Taiji and Narachi to threaten Fu Lin. In the end, Fu Lin said that ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The dead should die, and living in this world would only mess up the rules of the world. He was willing to accompany his father and grandfather back to the place where they should be. Now, even Yaoguang felt that it was a little tricky. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Liunyan Ling had an idea. She insisted that if Fu Lin did not dance, then she would drag concubine Dongo's body out of the coffin and throw it outside to feed the wild dogs. As a result, Fu Lin, who had just said that ashes to dust, immediately gave in. As a result, Huang Taiji and Narachi were so angry that they joined forces to beat this unfilial grandson half to death. Fu Lin's Shaoling Mausoleum was naturally connected to Aizen-Joro Xuanye's Jingling Mausoleum. Guhan and the others also met Aizen-Joro Xuanye, who had just come to this world. However, this great-grandson looked much older than his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. With white hair and a beard, Xian Yi looked more like the ancestor of these three people. Xian Yi recognized his father. After all, Xian Yi often secretly went to Mount Wutai to visit his father, so he recognized Fu Lin at a glance. Then he bowed to his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather respectively, and quickly accepted all the facts. He was very happy and took the initiative to perform the shamanic secret techniques for Guhan. During the whole process, he had a smile on his face, without a trace of displeasure. What surprised Gohan even more was that Xian Ye's dancing level was much higher than that of the other three, and he did not need Nurachi to teach him the inexplicable shamanic secret techniques at all. Xian Yi naturally jumped out and performed the standard shamanic secret techniques himself. Later, after asking, he learned that before his death, Xian Yi had gathered many masters of Taoism, Buddhism, shamanism, and Lamaism to perform some life-prolonging magic for him. Even Xian Yi himself had learned many so-called secret techniques, including the shamanic secret technique. Unfortunately, it was of no use. When it was time to die, he still had to die. However, the secret techniques he learned were very authentic, far surpassing those of his ancestors. This is a powerful person. He looks like an emperor. Xian Yi maintained a smile no matter what happened. At the same time, his body was straight, and a king's aura emanated from his body. From this, it could be seen that Xian Yi could be an emperor for 60 years not only because of his long life, but also because of many other factors. There was nothing much to say about what happened next. It was nothing more than the process of a son meeting his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Of course, there were some interludes. For example, Yongjing's skeleton was headless, and Qianlong's skeleton was placed messily in the coffin. All the skeletons were not connected, but pieced together. Some bones were even the size of grains of sand. Qianlong's skull was broken into 2 halves, and most of his jaw was smashed. Therefore, when Emperor Qianlong saw his skeleton in this state, he immediately began to cry. According to Liu Yanling, after the fall of the Qing dynasty, a guy named Sun Dianying dug up all their mausoleums, robbed all the treasures in the mausoleums, and smashed all the bones into pieces. This old man never expected that he would die so miserably, and even his skeleton was broken into this state. However, what comforted Qianlong was that the skeletons of the emperors after him were not so good, which made this old man feel much better. However, it was inevitable that he would criticize his descendant, especially when he heard that the last emperor of the Qing dynasty was forced to abdicate by a powerful minister. He began to scold the minister for being ungrateful. But when Qianlong heard that there had been no more dynasties in Huaxia since the Qing dynasty, and that the Qing dynasty was the last dynasty in Huaxia, he began to feel complacent again. The last dynasty in the world could be regarded as the only glory in Huaxia. How could other dynasties enjoy this glory? Anyway, Qianlong's behavior disgusted Gohan and the other two. But in order to let these emperors help him open the next blood formation, he could only tolerate these emperors with all kinds of trick. When Gohan's team arrived at Chongling of the Qing dynasty, there were as many as 11 emperors of the Qing dynasty behind them. At this time, there were old emperors and young emperors. The oldest one was Emperor Qianlong, who lived for 89 years. He was the oldest emperor among them. The youngest emperor was Emperor Tongji, who only lived for 19 years before he died. But when they heard that this descendant died of venereal disease, his ancestors all showed expressions of sympathy. It seemed that there was a secret that could not be revealed. In short, when Gohan and the other two arrived, 11 of the 12 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence had fallen into Gohan's hands. These 11 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence all had matching great witch blood beads. Among the 12 great witches, Chang'e of the Huda tribe was still alive. Obviously, the last drop was the Huda tribe's Zhu Wu's blood essence. But strangely, no matter how the unlucky Emperor Guangxu danced in front of the blood formation, there was no reaction. It was as if the other end of the blood formation had already been closed. Just as everyone was puzzled by this, the Guangxu Emperor suddenly said weakly, "Before you came here, I had a conversation with an ugly woman. But she suddenly told me that something big had happened and that she had to close the blood formation on the other end. That ugly woman must have been Chang'e." Yao Guang immediately reacted. She must have discovered that the other blood formation had been activated and knew that there was a problem with Zhu Wu's blood essence. So she closed the blood formation on the other end so that this blood formation could not be opened. You're saying that this thing is called the blood formation? Guangxu hesitated for a moment. When I was imprisoned in the summer palace, I often chatted with the shaman's high priest. He once told me that the shaman's blood formation was the shaman's most powerful secret technique. It had the ability to bring the dead back to life and destroy the heavens and earth. However, there are no shamans who have the ability to reactivate the blood formation. Only by finding as much Zhu Wu's blood essence as possible can we forcibly activate the blood formation's power. You're saying that Zhu Wu's blood essence can forcibly activate the blood formation's power? Yao Guang immediately became excited. Gohan, hurry and give me Zhu Wu's blood essence. I want to see if I can activate the blood formation. Chapter 1038. Yao Guang, why don't you rest this time? Previously, you were the one who used the blood beads to activate the blood spell formation. Let me do it. Gohan smiled at Yao Guang. Then, he walked up to the blood spell formation and took out a test tube containing Zhu Wu's blood essence. Then, he opened the lid and let the blood essence float out, placing it directly on the blood spell formation. As expected, with the appearance of Zhu Wu's blood essence, the blood spell formation that hadn't reacted no matter how Guangxu danced finally flashed with a blood-red light. It was clearly showing signs of being activated. However, this blood-red light was much dimmer than the other blood spell formations. Aside from the light, the blood spell formation didn't have any other reaction. The entire blood spell formation was in an incomplete state of activation. It seems that this is the power of one drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence. However, Gohan, add another drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence and try it out. Yao Guang hurriedly said. Gohan nodded and took out another test tube containing Zhu Wu's blood essence. Then, he placed the Zhu Wu's blood essence on the blood spell formation. As expected, with the appearance of the second drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence, the blood spell formation became much brighter. Unfortunately, it was still quite a distance away from the brightness required to truly activate it. And so, the third drop, the fourth drop, the fifth drop, more and more Zhu Wu's blood essence were placed on the blood spell formation by Gohan. The blood spell formation's light grew brighter and brighter. When Gohan placed the 10th drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence on the blood spell formation, the blood spell formation's light was infinitely close to the previous blood spell formation's light. Right now, only one more drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence would be needed for the blood spell formation to be completely activated. Gohan and the others would then be able to successfully reach the tomb of the last Qing dynasty emperor, Emperor Xian Tong. But when they reached this place, Gohan's hand suddenly stopped. He no longer placed the 11th drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence on the blood spell formation. Gohan, what's wrong? Why did you stop? Isn't the blood array about to be activated? Liu Ling noticed that Gohan had stopped, so she asked curiously. I'm thinking, if I take out the 11th drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence, will someone behind me suddenly attack me? Gohan's words were as cold as a sickle, scraping the hearts of everyone present. In the next second, Gohan suddenly pulled out his Juzi sword without hesitation, and with a twist, he directly stabbed at Yao Guang who was standing behind him. At the same time, the Big Dipper sword in Yao Guang's hand was about to reach the center of Gohan's back. If Gohan had been a step slower, the Big Dipper sword would have directly pierced through him. Come back! Gohan brushed aside the Big Dipper sword with his sword, and picked up 10 test tubes with his other hand at the same time, and covered the 10 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence on the blood spell formation. Don't even think about it. Yao Guang let out an angry voice, and at the same time, reached out his big hand to grab the 10 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence. However, in the end, it still reached Gohan's step, and the Zhu Wu's blood essence once again returned to Gohan's hand. What are you guys doing? Liu Ling looked at Gohan and Yao Guang with a dumbfounded expression. She could not understand why Yao Guang and Gohan, who were like biological brothers just now, would suddenly fight at this time. Whether it was Gohan's sword just now or Yaoguang's sword, they were all moves that directly attacked the opponent's vital points. If this sword really stabbed into the opponent, even if the opponent did not die, it would at least be half dead. This was completely a move that two enemies of life and death would use. How long do you want to keep up the act? Gohan held the sword and stood opposite of Yaoguang. Should I call you Yaoguang? Or should I call you Ingzheng? Ingzheng. Ingzheng. Everyone present was shocked, and among them, the 11 emperors of the Qing dynasty were the most shocked. As the emperors of a generation, they naturally admired the first emperor in the world, Qin Shi Huang Ingzheng. Many of them worshipped Qin Shi Huang as their lifelong idol. They never expected that the fierce man who kept forcing them with a sword was actually the legendary Qin Shi Huang. What nonsense are you talking about, Gohan? Yaoguang is a human. How could he be Qin Shi Huang? Liuyan Ling said in disbelief. Since you have seen through me, there is no need for me to continue the act. Miss Linlin is right. I am the one and only supreme ruler since the creation of the world. I am the first Emperor Ingzheng who has dominated the world. Yaoguang. Oh no. Ingzheng. He glanced at the 11 emperors of the Qing dynasty beside him and said disdainfully, "How dare these useless things call themselves emperors? How ridiculous! What nonsense are you talking about, Ingzheng? Your Qin dynasty has been destroyed for more than 2,000 years, and your descendants have only lasted for 2 generations. Oh, I forgot, there is also that poor child. Including him, it has only lasted for 3 generations. You are still thinking about the 2nd Qin dynasty, the 3rd Qin dynasty, and even the thousands of generations after that. How ridiculous! You are just relying on the prestige of your ancestors. Without the unremitting efforts of Duke Xiao of Qin, King Huiwen of Qin, and King Zhaoxiang of Qin, how could your Qin dynasty have unified the 6 states?" Hearing Ingzheng's disdain towards him, Nurachi was instantly enraged. He did not care about the threat of death and directly retorted. "Look at me, when I started the war, I only had 13 sets of armors. When I was down and out, I had to be Li Chengliang's attendant, so I was lucky enough to survive. This is what it means to start from scratch and build this magnificent Qing dynasty. You are just a 2nd generation who relied on the virtue of your ancestors. How can you be compared with me?" Nurachi's words excited his descendant. Yes, Qin Shi Huang was just relying on the virtue of his ancestors. Their Qing dynasty was built with 1 sword and 1 spear. Qin Shi Huang could not be compared with their ancestor Nurachi. Ignorant! In the face of Nurachi's rebuttal, Ingzheng showed even more disdain. "Nurachi, how do you, a descendant of the Dijiang tribe, become the human emperor of the 9 regions? Did you really rely on your own ability? Back then, if it wasn't for the fact that our Magi tribe chose a pawn like you to be the new human emperor and secretly sent the Magi tribe's heaven Magi to take care of you and turn you into a wild wolf to feed you wolf milk when you were still a baby, you would have starved to death on the 3rd day of your life. And we secretly sent people to spread all this, otherwise, how could the rumor that you were raised by the heavenly wolf spread so quickly throughout the whole Liaodong? If we hadn't secretly asked your stepmother, Nala, to abuse you with all her strength, how could you cultivate your firm character? If we didn't secretly send someone to pretend to be a Han storyteller, telling you stories about the 3 kingdoms, the water margin, and the legend of the heroes of the Sui and Tang dynasties, as well as the plots contained in the stories, how could you have learned so many plots and schemes? There is only one such storyteller in the whole Liaodong. Do you really think you are lucky to meet him? And Li Chengliang, how many tricks did we secretly use to make Li Chengliang adopt you as his son, and train you to be his spokesperson in the Jurchen tribe? Otherwise, how could you return to the Jurchen tribe and take over your father's family business? And the bloody battle between you and the other Jurchen tribes, if we hadn't secretly sent 13 heavenly witches to transform into 13 knights to help you fight, how could you raise an army with 13 sets of armors, defeat the strong and powerful Nickenwalen, and even gain the support of so many Jurchen tribes? And in the Ming dynasty, if it wasn't because our only remaining great witch sacrificed her life in exchange for all kinds of natural disasters in the Ming dynasty for a whole 23 years, which led to incessant peasant uprisings within the Ming dynasty, the bandits scourged the entire Central Plains and the south, exhausting the Ming dynasty and losing all its powerful soldiers. How could the mighty Ming dynasty be defeated by you, a little Jurchen from the Jianzhou? And that Donglin party, if it wasn't because we secretly contacted them and took the opportunity to attack Emperor Tianqi, how could Wei Zhongxian lose his power? How could that Donglin party support Emperor Tianqi's younger brother, Emperor Chongzhen, that good-for-nothing? Finally, let's talk about Li Zicheng. Although he is also one of the future emperors chosen by destiny, if we hadn't sent countless Wu humans to join his army, Li Zicheng would have been mistaken by the human Xianyuan clan as the human emperor that the Wu tribe was preparing to cultivate. As a result, all the power of the Xianyuan clan was used to attack Li Zicheng. That would have given you the opportunity to develop and grow stronger outside the past. And finally, at the most critical moment, you made all the soldiers of the Wu people who joined Li Zicheng's army turn against you. In the Battle of Shanhai Pass, how could a mere 100,000 of you defeat Li Zicheng's army of 300,000? So, do you understand now? Ing Jing spun around abruptly, fixing his eyes on Nurachi, who was sweating profusely as he listened, and said, "The reason why you could ascend to the throne of the human emperor is all because of the secret planning of us, the Wu people, and the other tribes. Even a fool can ascend to the supreme throne with our ingenious planning. Whether your name is Nurachi, or Nurachi, you can easily sit on that throne." Ing Zheng's words made Nurachi and the other emperors of the Qing dynasty sweat profusely, and each of them felt very guilty. When these emperors grew up, they had also been curious about how the Jurchen clan could occupy the Central Plains, which had a population of hundreds of millions, with only 200,000 people, and become the human emperor of the Central Plains. They themselves also felt that the whole process was very unreal, as if there was a hand in the heaven helping the Jurchen clan to get through each tribulation and move forward step by step. Of course, they could not figure out the real answer, and could only secretly think that it was the heaven's blessing, the symbol of the heaven's will, and they were the human emperors chosen by the heaven. Only now, after listening to Ing Zheng's words, did they understand that it was not the heaven that was helping them, but the power of the entire Wu people that was secretly pushing them forward. Ling, what I said just now is very important. You have to write it down. As long as you publicize it, we might be able to get the Kanzu History Prize. Gohan, who was listening at the side, said to Liunian Ling with great interest. Indeed, what Ing Zheng said was very important to the human beings after the cultural disruption. It could fill in dozens of gaps in history, solve dozens of unsolved mysteries, and put an end to the debate of whether Emperor Chongzhen was the son of Emperor Tianqi or the brother of Emperor Tianqi, which had been debated by countless historians for 500 years. Chapter 1039. Nurachi and Huang Taiji, the two founding emperors of the great Qing dynasty, who boasted that they had overturned the entire Ming dynasty with their own strength, had their entire outlook on life shattered by the secret revealed by Ing Zheng. Because of that, they began to have strong doubts about what they had experienced in the past. The rest of the ignorant emperors slowly retreated to a corner of the underground palace under the lead of Xianyi, who claimed to be the most famous emperor of the Qing dynasty. This 70-year-old old man had already sensed that the two inhuman experts seemed to be brewing an earth-shattering battle. Ordinary humans with no ability like him had better stay as far away from them as possible, lest they get caught up in the crossfire. How satisfying! It's been a long time since I've spoken the truth so happily. After reprimanding Nurhasai, Jing pulled his collar comfortably, looked at Gohan calmly, and said with a smile, "We're not in a hurry to fight. You don't know how uncomfortable it's been for me to be alone for so many years. I really want to find someone to tell all my secrets to. Now that this is a good opportunity, why don't we have a good chat?" "Are you trying to buy time?" Wu Qi rubbed his nose. Now, all 11 drops of ancestral sorcerer's blood essence were in his hands, and the blood pearls of grand sorcerers were also in his hands. Even if this Zheng was stalling for time, what exactly was he waiting for? "Don't think too much. I just want to find someone to talk to. Time is not necessary for me. Otherwise, if I didn't activate those blood formations, I'm afraid you would still be in the underground palace at the beginning, and wouldn't be able to come here. Am I right?" Jing said with a smile. "What do you think?" Gohan did not answer Jing directly, but turned to Liuyan and asked. "You ask me, don't ask me, my head is a mess now. What exactly happened here? I can't figure out a single thing," Liuyan said, knocking her head in annoyance. At this moment, Liuyan brain was not enough to process it. "Then let's talk." Gohan nodded, then looked at Jing. "What secrets do you want to tell me?" Sigh. But to his surprise, Jing did not answer Gohan's question directly. Instead, he shook his head and said, "Although it is a necessary duty for me, the great Demon King, to explain the ins and outs of the matter, but if I answer your question, won't I be at a disadvantage? Why don't you ask me a question, and I ask you a question, and we both have to answer truthfully?" "There's no need for that. I don't have time to play quiz games with you." Gohan's face turned cold. Gohan had no intention of revealing his secret. "Hey, why don't you get it? Secrets are meant to be shared with everyone. Why don't we do this? You ask me 2 questions, and I'll only ask you 1 question. This way, you'll make a fortune, won't you?" Gohan ignored Jing. Sigh, what a pity. It seems like someone doesn't even want to know where Artoria is, nor does he want to know how Gu Xuanwu is doing. What a pity. Jing pursed his lips and said something that Gohan could not refuse. "What did you say?" Gohan was stunned and stared at Jing. "You really know about Artoria and Gu Xuanwu? Why should I believe what you said?" "I'll take that as your first question." Jing smiled contentedly. "Can you guess who was it that worked with Artoria to seal Gilgamesh, that golden guy in the crack of the radiance? You mean to say that you and Artoria sealed Gilgamesh together?" Gohan said in shock. He had heard the history of Radiant City from the inheritor of the Radiant Capital. He knew that Gilgamesh was actually sealed in the Radiant Amusement Park by Artoria and another unknown Yuan Ko. But at that time, Gohan had no idea who sealed Gilgamesh with Artoria. Now, the mystery was revealed. It was Qin Shi Huang Jing. "By the way, do you want me to tell you the real relationship between you and Gu Xuanwu?" Jing suddenly winked at Liuyan obviously. Jing already knew that Gu Xuanwu was Gohan's biological daughter. That was why he winked at Liuyan, asking Gohan if he should let Liuyan know about this. "No need, I believe what you said," Gohan said without thinking, which made Liuyan anxious. She secretly pinched the soft flesh on Gohan's waist and asked Gohan fiercely, "Tell me, what is your relationship with Gu Xuanwu? Could it be that you guys are a couple?" Facing Liuyan anger, Gohan's expression did not change. He did not answer, which made Liuyan want to bite Gohan. "Then let me ask you, where is Artoria? What happened to Gu Xuanwu?" Gohan asked Jing directly. TSK. These are 2 questions. You have already asked me 1 question, so I can only answer one of these 2 questions. After you answer my question, I will ask you the other question. After saying that, Jing suddenly threw out a large blood-red net towards the group of Qing dynasty emperors, who were huddled up in a far corner, but had their ears pricked up to eavesdrop on the conversation between Gu Han and the others. The blood-red net wrapped around all these emperors, then threw them to the ground like a bunch of roosters caught in a net. My secret is actually not for these irrelevant people to hear. With my net here, I guarantee that these people will not hear a single word, Ing Jing said with a chuckle. He only pitied the trembling emperors trapped in the net. Then I will answer Artoria's question first. Actually, this isn't a secret among us high-level bandit. Artoria is currently trapped in the space-time tunnel of the Martyr's Palace. She's been trapped there for more than 300 years without food or water. Perhaps she's already a pile of bones. Oh, sorry, I forgot, we high-level bandits don't starve. I just hope that the 300 years of torture won't turn Artoria into a lunatic. Ing Jing did not hesitate and directly told Gohan the answer that Gohan had been waiting for almost a year. It's actually the Spaceless Channel. Gohan had never heard of the strange name of the Spaceless Channel, but Liuyan Ling beside Gohan exclaimed in surprise. It was clear that Liuyan Ling knew about the Spaceless Channel. Ling, hurry up and tell me, what is this Spaceless Channel? Gohan immediately asked Liuyan Ling anxiously. I'm not too sure either, but our patriarch's drifting goblet Jiandi once broke into the Martyr's Palace's headquarters and fought with the Yuan Ko there. He inadvertently heard some information about the Spaceless Channel. I heard that the Spaceless Channel is the most mysterious and unfathomable place in the Martyr's Palace. It connects all points of time from ancient times to the present, and the heroic spirits of the Martyr's Palace can appear in any era through the Spaceless Channel. For example, Qin Shi Huang can appear in the Han Dynasty, the Tang Dynasty, and the Ming Dynasty through the Spaceless Channel, but he can't appear in the Qin Dynasty. He can only appear between the time of his birth and the time of his death, fleeting time Lin explained with great difficulty. That's right, Qin Shi Huang. Doesn't this mean that the Martyr's Palace can use the Spaceless Channel to travel through time at will? It can even change the past and the future? Gohan was astonished. If the Martyr's Palace really had this kind of ability, then they could totally send the Martyr's Palace back to the time when the Sword Ancestor was born and use the Flood level and Desolate level Yuan bandits to kill the Sword Ancestor, who was only a famous sword rank back then, in the Hubei Province Museum. Without the Sword Ancestor, the human race would definitely perish. Gohan, you're overthinking things. That's just the Martyr's Palace bragging. If the Spaceless Channel could really be used, then why would they be beaten so badly by you humans? In fact, ever since the apocalypse, the Spaceless Channel has lost its original function. It's just a simple corridor now. At this point, Ing Jing paused for a brief moment, and then continued in a playful tone, however, because time has no beginning and end, this corridor has no beginning and end as well. In the past, we could still leave the seamless passage by traveling through time and space. But now that the Spaceless Channel has become a simple corridor, there really is no exit. Even if a Flood-grade and Desolate-grade Yuan Ko enters there, he won't be able to find the exit of the Spaceless Channel. In the past 1,000 years, there has never been a case of a Yuan Ko or a human coming out of the Spaceless Channel. I'm afraid Artoria will never be able to come out. Is that true? Gohan looked at Liuyan Ling with a questioning gaze. Liuyan Ling hesitated for a moment before nodding. Drifting Goblet Jiandi did mention this in the information. Back then, he was almost tricked into the Spaceless Channel by the Martyr's Palace. If Drifting Goblet Jiandi hadn't reacted at the last moment and forced out the secret of the Spaceless Channel, I'm afraid Drifting Goblet Jiandi would have disappeared from the Spaceless Channel forever. Gohan, listen to me. I really want to give you a piece of advice. After King Arthur entered the Spaceless Channel, it's impossible for him to escape. Don't be stupid and run into the Spaceless Channel. I can't. This world can't live without you. Humans can't live without you. Liuyan Ling could guess Gohan's plan. She knew that Gohan was thinking of entering the Spaceless Channel to save Artoria, so she immediately advised him, afraid that Gohan would really run into the Spaceless Channel. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid, Guhan replied to Liu Ling, but in his heart, he was thinking, no wonder I Ching desperately warned me not to try and save Artoria before I reach the immortal sword tier. So Artoria is hiding in this desperate situation that even Jiendi can't escape from. I'm afraid this corridor formed by time is not something that can be broken through by humans. Am I really going to give up on saving Artoria just like that? No. I Ching told me that I can't save Artoria before I reach the immortal sword tier. Doesn't that mean that as long as I reach the immortal sword tier, I will have the right to save Artoria? Could it be that there is a way to escape from the spaceless channel in this world? Guhan's mind was spinning rapidly, and he didn't notice that Ing Zheng was urging him from outside. I have answered your 2 questions. Guhan, it's time for you to answer my question now. Chapter 1040. I'll have to thank the He Jade for that. Ing Zheng pointed out that this was the second question. Instead, he answered generously, the He Jade is a fragment of Dao ancestor Hongjuan's jade butterfly of fortune. It possesses an extremely magical power. Before I disappeared, I once patrolled the 9 provinces and absorbed the dragon veins into the jade butterfly of fortune. After that, I hid in the imperial mausoleum that I meticulously built. After 777 years of arduous cultivation, I finally attained immortality. Ask whatever you want to know. I really don't know where your interest comes from, Guhan said helplessly. At the same time, he made up his mind that once he found out about the black tortoise's condition, he would immediately kill this damned Ing Zheng. It's just that the way I attained immortality is a little special. When I live to 100 years old, I can revert to the appearance of a baby overnight. After that, I can relive my life from a baby to an old man. Ing Zheng finally revealed all his secrets. According to what you said, Artoria is not Yuan Ko, Liu Bei and Lu Bu are not Yuan Ko, and Misaka Mikoto and the others are not Yuan Ko. The blood flowing in their bodies is pure human blood. They are much stronger than you, a mixed blood of humans and witches, Liu Ling retorted. On the other hand, Ing Zheng had a shocked expression on his face when he heard Guhan's question. He looked at Guhan in disbelief and murmured, I've underestimated you. How can you even see through this? How did you see through it? Are you a human or Yuan Ko? The question that Guhan asked puzzled Liu Ling. Was there even a need to ask such a question? Since Ing Zheng was a Wu people, then Ing Zheng must be Yuan Ko. Was there a need to ask such a question? Let me ask you, have you ever liked my sister? Ing Zheng's train of thought was indeed ingenious. Guhan did not expect that the first question that Ing Zheng asked him would be such a question. Then how did you survive for 3,000 years? My Lunyan family also has records of the Wu people. We know that the Wu people have existed before the Great Calamity, and they do indeed possess many miraculous powers. However, no matter how magical the Wu people are, they can't transcend the limitations of time. In fact, their lifespans are much shorter than ordinary people. They usually reach the end of their lifespans when they are 60 or 70 years old. How did you survive until now? Liu Ling murmured. This is the second question. Let's talk again after you answer my 2 questions. Guhan used Ing Zheng's words to return the question. This is all Guhan's credit. If it wasn't for Guhan, your scheme would have succeeded long ago. Who knows, the Zhou Tian star battle formation might have been breached by now. How dare you claim all the credit for it? Liu Ling said angrily. This could explain many inexplicable situations. For example, how Ing Zheng could disguise himself as Yaoguang and pass through layers and layers of strict detection equipment. Since Yaoguang was a child, no one had ever discovered that Ing Zheng was Yuan Ko. Liu Ling was so shocked by Ing Zheng's words that she took a step back. She never thought that the Ing Zheng in front of her was the Ing Zheng from 3,000 years ago. He was the Qin Shi Huang who had lived for 3,000 years, experienced the Han Dynasty, the Northern and Southern Jin dynasty, the 5 Barbarians Rebellion, the Sui dynasty, the Tang dynasty, the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, the Northern and Southern Song dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, the Ming dynasty, the Qing dynasty, the Fusang invasion, the Celestial dynasty, the Great Destruction era, and the current 3,000 years. TSK, you just came from a two-dimensional world. Countless two-dimensional worlds have you, the Qin Shi Huang. Liuyan Ling wanted to ridicule Ying Zheng for coming here from a two-dimensional world, and there were many two-dimensional worlds that had Qin Shi Huang. Therefore, it was almost impossible for Yuan Ko to hide his true identity in front of human beings. But Ying Zheng was different. He was not a Yuan Ko who came here from another dimension. He was a very normal human being. Perhaps there was no human being under the heaven whose bloodline was purer than Ying Zheng's. If Ying Zheng was not a human being, then no one under the heaven could be called a human being. All my descendants have been killed by Xiang Yu and Liu Bang, and the Wu people from the Feilian clan are all dead. I, Ying Zheng, have nothing to do with the human beings in this world. So, why should I care about their lives? Ying Zheng sneered and said, but of course the Wu people trapped in the Zhou Tian star battle formation have nothing to do with me, and I have no reason to help them get out of here. I am not Yuan Ko, and I am a real human being. Ying Zheng gave an answer that Liuyan Ling found hard to believe, so much so that Liuyan Ling blurted out, "That's impossible. You are Ying Zheng, you are the Wu people. How could you be a human being?" You. Gohan suddenly felt like he was being played. He really wanted to kill Ying Zheng immediately, but when he thought of the black tortoise, Gohan had to retract his hand. Then, he asked his next question. The second question, since you are a real human being, you are naturally one with human beings. Why did you betray human beings and help the Wu people? Frowning, Gohan asked, although you are a mixed blood of the Wu people and human beings, and you are also a grand wizard of the Wu people in essence and principle, you are different from the Yuan Ko and Wu people in the Zhou Tian star battle formation. But in terms of essence and principle, they are different from the Yuanko Wu tribe in the Great Cosmic Star formation. You are not the same kind of Wu tribe as them. Why do you want to help them? Do you want to see them break out of the Great Cosmic Star formation and kill all human beings? Aren't all the humans in the future your descendants? That's why you can enter a normal human family as a baby and become the brother and sister of Mingyu. Although Gohan had guessed that Ying Zheng was the Ying Zheng from 3,000 years ago, he did not expect Ying Zheng to be immortal in this way. But at the same time, Gohan breathed a sigh of relief. This meant that Yaoguang's sister, Mingyu, was different from Yaoguang. Mingyu was not the Wu people, so she was not a traitor to human beings. You mean Mingyu? Is she really your sister? Gohan asked. No. Gohan answered without thinking, which made Liuyan Ling relax her clenched fists. I treat her as an ordinary friend who has helped me a lot. That's the truth. Since Mingyu has found her own home, I wish her happiness. Don't waste any more time on me. That's another question. You'd better answer mine first. Gohan retorted stiffly. But at this point, Liuyan Ling suddenly realized the mystery in Ying Zheng's words. She stammered, Could it be? Could it be? Are you really the first emperor from 3,000 years ago, Ying Zheng? No, they are Yuan Ko. They are indeed the real Yuan Ko, but I am not Yuan Ko. Ying Zheng's eyes widened. I am the supreme existence in the world. I am the first emperor of the human race. Do you understand? Ying Zheng was very sincere, like a child who was admitting his mistakes in front of his class teacher. Is this true? Are you saying this because of Miss Ling? Ying Zheng's face was full of disbelief. Then why did you do all these things? Fleeting Ling asked angrily upon hearing Yi Si's words. What a joke. The Wu people have been imprisoned here for more than 100 years. If I wanted to save them, I had plenty of opportunities in these 100 years. Why did I wait until now to do it? Ying Zheng glared at Liuyan Ling, then looked at Gohan and said, You are a smart man. You should be able to see that I am not the same kind of person as the Wu people here. I don't want the Wu people here to escape. I have been playing with these ridiculous Yuan Ko from the beginning. What have I done? Isn't the Zhou Tian star battle formation still in good condition? Didn't the 12 great sorcerers all die in the hands of Gohan? The Wu people are now severely injured. It is impossible for them to pose any threat to the Zhou Tian star battle formation. What are you dissatisfied with? Ing Zheng snorted coldly and said, "This is all my credit. How dare you call me a traitor?" Gohan, I will not beat around the bush. As long as you give me the blood essence of Zhu Wu, I will immediately leave the Zhou Tian star battle formation and disappear from this world. As long as you, Gohan, are still alive in this world, I will stay at home and be the good brother of Mingyu, the good leader of Yaoguang sword sect, the good son of my parents, and the best swordsman of mankind. I will fight with Yuan Ko until the end for the sake of mankind. I swear that I will do what I say. Gohan, believe me and give me the blood essence of Zhu Wu. Hearing Ing Zheng's question, Liu Ling suddenly clenched her fists tightly. If Gohan's answer was not what she wanted, her fists would eventually fall on Gohan. This also explained why Ing Zheng could synchronize with Sword Lady. Ing Zheng was a real human, so of course he could synchronize with Sword Lady. Once Ing Zheng succeeded in synchronizing with Sword Lady, no one would suspect that Ing Zheng was a spy for the Wu people. Ask away. Ing Zheng shrugged his shoulders, then suddenly added, "Oh right, let me add another rule. Only when I get tired of answering your questions, will I tell you about young Miss Gu Xuanwu. Otherwise, I will absolutely not answer your question." I didn't expect the bloodline of Fleeting Calendar to be so stupid. I even praised him for his intelligence. Ing Zheng snorted coldly and said, "That's right. I'm not a Yuanko who came here from some two-dimensional world. I'm the first emperor, Ing Zheng, who unified the world 3,000 years ago. Of course, she is my good little sister. After all, we have been siblings for over 20 years. Ing Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Although we are not real siblings, I've always treated her as my real sister. You don't know that my sister always talks about you with me behind my back. Although she has found a new boyfriend, I can tell that she has never let go of you. So, I want to ask you, have you ever liked my sister?" Who said Ing Zheng is not a human? Isn't Ing Zheng the human emperor of the human race? Don't tell me that there is no human blood flowing in Ing Zheng's body? Ing Zheng said loudly. The reason why Yuan Ko's identity as Yuan Ko could be easily discovered by humans was because they were existences who came from another dimension. Therefore, the surface of their bodies would be wrapped by the power of the dimension. This was also the reason why Gohan could clearly see their dimensional nodes. Chapter 1041. What does he mean? After listening to Ing Zheng's last words, Liu Ling asked Gohan in confusion, "Don't you get it? The reason why he's willing to tell me so much, and even said that he can't hide the secret in his heart and wants to spill it all out, is that he wants to tell me to give him the blood essence of Zhu Wu, and that he's not on the same side as the Zhu Wu in Shanhai Pass." Gohan smiled. "That's right, that's exactly what I mean." Since Gohan had seen through him, Ing Zheng did not bother to play the game of question and answer anymore. He went straight to the point and said, "I'm different from these Yuan Kos. I'm a real native of Earth, and it's the Earth that gave birth to me and raised me. As for the Wu people in Shanhai Pass, they're just fake Wu people who came here from another world. They're just like my clones. How can I treat them as my own people? It's impossible for me to help these Yuan Kos destroy the Earth. However, the blood essence of Zhu Wu in the hands of these Wu people is real, and it can be used by me to help me break through the level of Grand Magus. These silly Yuan Ko's Grand Magi are just my toys. I just need to show them a little bit of my strength as a Grand Magus, and they foolishly think that I'm the same as them. If it weren't for the fact that Chang Yi has always been suspicious of me, and caused the other Grand Magi to never tell me where the blood essence of Zhu Wu's is hidden, I wouldn't have to go against my conscience and help them design this escape plan that will cause great casualties to the human race. Everything I've done is because I have no other choice. If I can get my hands on Zhu Wu's blood essence, I'll be able to become a Zhu Wu, a native Zhu Wu who was born and raised on Earth. This is equivalent to Earth gaining the combat power of an Emperor Sword Bearer, and it's an Emperor Sword Bearer who can live forever and fight for the human race. Isn't this a very good thing for Earth and mankind? Yingjing said in a bewitching tone. Although his words sounded bewitching, when Liuyan Ling gave it a second thought, she found that what Yingjing said did make a lot of sense. If Yingjing could really borrow Zhu Wu's blood essence to become Zhu Wu, then with Yingjing's immortal ability, he could indeed fight for mankind for a long time. It was equivalent to mankind having an eternal Emperor Sword Wielder. Even if an Emperor Sword Wielder was as strong as Kanzu or Zhetianjiandi in the end, he would still have to ascend. At most, he would only be able to fight for humans for 40 to 50 years. However, as long as Yingjing did not die in the hands of Yuan Ko, he would be able to fight for 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. Humans would never face the situation of lacking Emperor Sword-level sword holders. Thinking about it this way, it was indeed an extremely good thing. Yingjing, can you really stand on the side of mankind forever? Guhan was not bewitched by Yingjing. Instead, he asked in disdain. Guhan had indeed pointed out the most important question, and that was this Yingjing willing to continue fighting for mankind at all costs? Perhaps during the few years when he became Zhu Wu, he was indeed willing to fight for mankind. However, as time passed, it was hard to say what would happen. Even the purest human, Ming Yuan Jiandi, would eventually betray mankind and fall into the arms of Yuan Ko. It was hard to guarantee that Yingjing would not be the next one. I am the human emperor, the peerless first emperor. All humans are my people. It is only natural for me to protect them forever. Is there a problem with that? I'm just like a human father. Of course, I'll love and protect my children selflessly. This is the responsibility of every father. Please don't doubt my dignity as a father, okay? Yingjing said with a look of boundless love. It is precisely because you are the peerless first emperor that I suspect that your plan is not as simple as it seems now. Guhan's eyes seemed to see through everything. I believe that when you become Zhu Wu, you will indeed fight for mankind for a period of time. In fact, you will perform better than all the other sword holders. You will perform selflessly and fearlessly. You will even give up your life and sacrifice everything to fight. That's right. Guhan, you understand me the best. This is what I should do. Yingjing nodded and said proudly. No, this is not what you should do. This is what you want to do. You want to perform for all humans. You want to establish your supreme prestige among mankind. When you have such prestige, what do you want to do? Especially when you still have eternal life, what do you want to do? Guhan pursed his lips. You'll want to rebuild your Qin dynasty. You'll want to become the supreme emperor of this world again. You'll even start a war in an attempt to unify the 8 base cities under your command. You might even destroy the possibility of other sword bearers becoming Emperor Sword Bearers in order to protect your own power. Only then will no one be able to challenge your position. In the next 20 to 30 years, you may be the greatest savior of mankind. But in the next 200 to 300 years, you will definitely be the greatest disaster for mankind. You will be the culprit that will destroy mankind. Mankind will eventually be destroyed by your desire. How can I give Zhu Wu's blood essence to someone like you? Yingjing's words were so powerful that Liuyan Ling's eardrums hurt. Upon hearing Guhan's words, Yingjing fell into a moment of speechless silence. After a long while, a wry smile emerged on his face and he said, I thought you are the one who knows me the best, but little did I expect that you are the one who misunderstands me the most. I love this world. I only want to give it the greatest happiness. I will save mankind from the endless Yuan Ko. Why don't you believe in my sincerity? If you are really so great, why did you hide your identity in the 1,000 years after the Great Apocalypse? Gohan went straight to the point. With your strength as a great wizard, you could have taken the initiative to stand out and help mankind fight at the beginning of the Great Apocalypse. You could have saved mankind during their most difficult time. Do you think I didn't want to? Ying said painfully. When the Great Apocalypse started, I had reverted to the state of an infant. I could only watch as mankind was slaughtered. I had no power at all. When I finally grew up and regained my strength, mankind already had the fleeting year calendar. Therefore, I decided to protect mankind in the dark and not expose my identity. At the same time, because I only have the strength of a great wizard, which is equivalent to an immortal sword wielder, mankind doesn't have much power with or without me. On the contrary, if I pretended to be Yuan Ko and mixed in with Yuan Ko's camp, I would be able to obtain a lot of information from Yuan Ko. You must not know this, right? Back then, Artoria betrayed the Martyr's Palace because I persuaded her. Then, I helped Ardwolf find a way to remove the filth. That was how Artoria was freed from the filth. Without me, Artoria would still be King Arthur of the Martyr's Palace. I have worked hard and made great contributions. If it wasn't for the sudden appearance of the wizard tribe, which gave me hope of becoming the wizard ancestor, I would have continued to hide in the dark and help the humans gather information. I'm really doing this for the sake of the humans. My heart can be seen by the heavens, the sun, and the moon. With the ancestors of Great Qin as my witness, I can't be more sincere. I didn't expect that he would interfere in Artoria's betrayal. Gohan didn't expect to hear another earth-shattering news from Ying. Gohan was wondering how Ardwolf, with his mediocre abilities, could find a way to remove the filth. So, it turned out that Ying was behind it. It seemed that Gohan had to give Ying credit. Lie. Keep lying. However, Gohan was not moved at all. He continued to ruthlessly expose Ying's thoughts. If that's what you really think, you could have gone to the headquarters of the Sword Committee when Wu people appeared and told them your identity. Then, you could have shown them the information you provided to mankind over the years as evidence. I believe that as long as the headquarters confirmed that you have no ill intentions, they would have done their best to help you become Zhu Wu. There would have been no need for you to disguise yourself as a sword-bearer and come to Shanghai Pass to obtain the blood essence of Zhu Wu by deceiving them. More importantly, because of your deception, your disguise, and the plans you gave to Wu people, at least thousands more sword-bearers died in Shanghai Pass for no reason. Even a top-notch sword-bearer like Lilith lost her power as a sword-bearer because of you. In your eyes, Ying, human lives are worthless. How can I believe that you will continue to fight for mankind selflessly? You are just a selfish man. All the emperors in the world are selfish men, and you, Ying, are the most selfish of them all. I will never believe you. But, if you insist on getting the blood essence of Zhu Wu, it's not impossible. Unexpectedly, Gohan, who had just rejected Ying with righteous words just a moment ago, changed the topic and said, "Based on the friendship we built in the game, I'm willing to believe you for once. I will report everything that happened today to the Sword Committee headquarters. Then, you have to accept a full investigation by the Sword Committee headquarters. As long as the Sword Committee headquarters agrees to help you become an ancestor of Sorcerer, I am willing to give you the blood essence of the ancestor of Sorcerer. What do you think?" Gohan had indeed proposed a more feasible solution. After all, he would throw the blame to the Sword Committee headquarters, and everything that happened in the future would have nothing to do with Gohan. "All right." Ying nodded without hesitation. "I promise you." "Phew. That's right. We are all humans, so there's no need to make things so awkward." Liuyan Ling, who was watching from the side, said with a smile. In her opinion, things had finally come to a good end. Mankind would have an emperor sword-bearer forever. Your man is amazing. I've been completely convinced by him. Ying let out a long sigh of relief. He then opened his arms wide toward Liu Ling and said with a smile, "We have a bad attitude too. Let's celebrate." Okay. Liu Ling did not suspect anything. She happily opened her arms and was about to hug Ying. However, just as they were about to hug each other, a cold and sharp sword light flashed. The pitch-black Juzi sword blocked in front of Liu Ling's chest. At that moment, a huge crack appeared on Ying's chest, and a bloody hand reached out from it. If it were not for Gohan's timely block, Liu Ling's chest would have been pierced through by Ying. Chapter 1042. Ying, you. Liu Ling stared incredulously at the bloody hand poking out of Ying's chest. If not for Gohan's quick reaction, she would have been killed by Ying. Ying, how can you be so shameless? Gohan pushed Ying's third hand away with his sword. Just for this, I will never hand over Zhu Wu's blood essence to you. Then there's no other way. Let's see who's stronger. Ying retracted his third hand back into his body, then raised the Big Dipper sword in his hand and said, Gohan, don't think that your swordsmanship is unparalleled in the world. Even Lu Nian was defeated by me in those years. It's time for you to understand that there's always someone better than you out there. Judging from the way Ying was holding his sword, it seemed that this fellow was planning to compete with Gohan in swordsmanship, which was exactly what Gohan wanted. You can't win by bragging. Let me send you back to Emperor Qin's mausoleum. After that, both Gohan and Ying struck their swords at the same time. In an instant, both sides clashed in the air. The battle had entered a white-hot state from the very beginning. Are these two perverts? Liu Ling, who was watching from the side, murmured to herself in disbelief after only watching the battle for less than 20 seconds, which lasted more than 100 moves. Liu Ling could be considered to have received the true teachings of the Lu Nian family. Among all the sword masters, her swordsmanship was only second to her grandfather, sword spirit mystic Mist, and the freak Gohan. Liu Ling was confident that she could suppress any other sword-bearer with just her swordsmanship alone. But when she saw the battle between Gohan and Ying, she suddenly realized that she had become a laughable frog at the bottom of a well in just a few months. 6 months ago, she was confident that she could compete with Gohan in swordsmanship, but now Liu Ling found that she was like a baby compared to Gohan. If she were to compete with Gohan in swordsmanship, she would be defeated by Gohan in less than 20 moves. This was equivalent to the gap between an adult and a baby. Liu Ling felt that even her grandfather, Fleeting Wooden Fish, was no match for Gohan's swordsmanship. Perhaps only her father, Fleeting Wooden Fish, could compete with Gohan. If Gohan's swordsmanship had reached such a high level, then the fact that Ying could fight Gohan on equal footing with Gohan in less than 20 seconds and more than 100 moves showed that Ying's swordsmanship was also terrifying. As for the level of swordsmanship between the two, it was not something that could be described with words. Liu Ling felt that the swordsmanship between the two had reached the level of the laws, and the laws were something that could only be understood, not explained. The two of them had exchanged more than 1,000 moves in just 5 minutes. Their speed was so fast that even the engine of a maglev flying car could not catch up to them. When the two of them separated from each other, it was already after 10 minutes and 1,500 moves. Both of them did not seem to be in a good state. Both of them were panting heavily, and it was obvious that they had expended a lot of energy. However, both of them seemed to be in a good mood. It was a kind of joy that could only be produced after a good workout. It's been a long time since I've had such a good fight. Ying exclaimed loudly. I can't believe you forced me to this point. Good. Good. It's really good. Gohan nodded. He had never thought that he would be able to use his swordsmanship to his heart's content other than when he was undergoing Kenzu's training. Gohan, I've really realized that I've underestimated you again and again, Jing exclaimed. Jing praised, I am a rare genius in the field of swordsmanship, and it took me 3,000 years of painstaking practice to reach the level I have today. But you, a 19-year-old boy, can actually be on par with me. You're just too scary. So scary that I have to find a way to kill you. Otherwise, you'll definitely become a thorn in my side in the future. I've also realized that I've underestimated your shamelessness. Gohan snorted coldly. You obviously have such a peerless ability, but you haven't done anything for mankind in the past 1,000 years. It's useless to keep you alive in this world. Gohan, don't be too proud of yourself. To tell you the truth, that wasn't my full strength just now. I still have the secret skills of the Wu people that I haven't used, and I still have the Emperor's swordsmanship that I haven't used. If I used all of them, you wouldn't be able to live past today. Jing said disdainfully. If you didn't put Zhu Wu's blood essence in your dimensional pocket, do you think I'll let you live until now? Then you can give it a try with your full strength. Gohan's attitude was also disdainful, because he also had a trump card that he hadn't used yet, and that was his chaos swordsmanship. After going through Kunzu's special training, Gohan's chaos swordsmanship had once again made a qualitative leap. Gohan really wanted to see who would be the final winner between him and Jing. Although I really want to kill you now, if I do, I won't be able to get Zhu Wu's blood essence in your dimensional pocket. I'm not that stupid. Jing sheathed his sword. Looking at the time, you should be here by now. Why don't you hurry up and come out? How long do you want to dawdle? As soon as Jing's voice faded, the ceiling of the underground palace was violently smashed open, revealing a large hole through which sunlight shone straight in. Immediately after that, a nimble and agile figure leaped into the underground palace and came standing right next to Jing. Hong Yu, why are you here? When Liuyan Ling and Gohan saw the face of the person who suddenly appeared, Liuyan Ling exclaimed again. It turned out that the person who appeared was none other than the new guardian of the sun, Hong Yu. Damn it! I still missed a step after all my calculations. Gohan's expression changed when he saw Hong Yu. It seemed that Gohan had never thought that Hong Yu would appear here, and Hong Yu's appearance had completely disrupted Gohan's plan. Ha ha ha! Finally, there's something you didn't expect. This feels great. I'm so happy. When Jing saw the change in Gohan's expression, he immediately burst into laughter. It was no wonder that Jing would be so happy. After all, when all his plans were seen through by Gohan, he felt ashamed of his own intelligence, and when he suddenly found out that he had a trick that Gohan did not expect, he felt a great joy that he could not wait for the whole world to celebrate with him. Could it be that Hong Yu is also Jing's man? This time, Liuyan Ling's intelligence finally came online, and she figured out Hong Yu's true camp. I should have thought of that. Gohan clenched his fist. Hong Yu is your man in the game, so there's a chance that Hong Yu is your man in real life. I was naive enough to think that Hong Yu joined the Yaoguang sword faction in the game only because she's your friend. How could this woman be my friend? Does she deserve to be my friend? Jing said in a sharp voice. Hong Yu, tell them what your relationship with me is. Hong Yu is your Majesty's lowliest slave. Hong Yu is willing to do anything for your Majesty. Hong Yu said in an extremely gentle and submissive voice. Hong Yu, kneel before me, Jing ordered again. As soon as he finished speaking, Hong Yu knelt before Jing without hesitation. She knelt on both knees, and her forehead touched the ground deeply. It was a posture of complete submission to Jing. Hong Yu, my shoes are dirty. Help me clean them up. Upon hearing Jing's order, Hong Yu's body hesitated for less than 0.1 second. Then, she immediately crawled under Jing's feet, stuck out her tongue, and licked Jing's leather shoes. Soon, Jing's leather shoes, which were covered in dust, were shiny with oil. Hong Yu, take off your clothes. Let Brother Gohan have a good look. The order made Hong Yu hesitate for 0.5 seconds, but in the end, she still reached out her hand to the opening on her clothes. Enough! Gohan flung out a stream of sword energy, repelling Hong Yu's hand that was about to undo the button. I know what you mean. You're shameless enough to threaten me with the Zhou Tian star battle formation. The reason why Ying Zheng asked Hong Yu to show herself was very obvious. Ying Zheng had once told Gohan that there was another way to break through the Zhou Tian star battle formation, and that was to kill the guardians of the lunar star and the solar star at the same time. Later on, Gohan went through the information that could only be accessed by the guardians of the solar star and the lunar star. What he found was not the guardians themselves, but the two great Zhou Tian star banners inside their bodies, which were of vital importance. Ying Zheng and Hong Yu only needed to break the great Zhou Tian star banners inside their bodies at the same time, and with that, the Zhou Tian star battle formation would collapse in an instant. At that point, without the suppression of the Zhou Tian star battle formation, the 12 Zhu Wu who were sealed deep under the ground would definitely wake up. At that point of time, the human race would be faced with a crisis that could possibly destroy the entire human race. Even if the human race managed to survive the crisis, the power of the sword bearers would definitely suffer a great loss, and only God knew what kind of ending the human race would face in the end. The reason why Ying Zheng asked Hong Yu to behave obediently like a slave to him was to tell Gohan that with just one word of his order, Hong Yu would break the great Zhou Tian star banners inside her body. At that point of time, everything would be destroyed. That was the reason why Gohan angrily said that Ying Zheng was shameless. It was you who forced me to do that. Ying Zheng shook his head helplessly. If you didn't force me with the blood essence of the Zhu Wu, I wouldn't want to do something like destroying everything together. After all, if the 12 Zhu Wu managed to break free from the Zhou Tian star battle formation, I would have to find a place to hide in and wait for the extinction of the human race. But, you don't have to worry, before I go into hiding, I will take in 1,000 virgin girls. In those years, Su Fu could create a Fusang with these 500 virgin girls and boys, and I can also create a great Qin with these 1,000 virgin girls. At that point of time, I will be the real ancestor of Huaxia, even more real than that Gongsun Xianyuan. After all, at that point of time, all the human race under the heaven will be my blood. Good heavens, this Ying Zheng is actually planning to create another Huaxia with 1,000 virgin girls? Isn't he afraid that the children he will give birth to will be idiots? Chapter 1043. What do you think? Do you want to change it or not? As long as you give me the blood essence of Zhu Wu, I'll give you the position of Guardian of Lunar Garrison, and your girlfriend the position of Guardian of Sunday. Isn't this fair? Ying Zheng looked at Gohan and asked with a smile on his face, because he knew Gohan would definitely change it, and he would never leave the destruction of the human race alone. Sure enough, Ying Zheng was right. After a long sigh, Gohan nodded his head helplessly. If Gohan changed it, then even if Ying Zheng became Zhu Wu, he would not be able to bring disaster to the human race in a short period of time. On the contrary, he might even be able to help the human race. On the contrary, if Gohan did not change it, then the destruction of the human race would be imminent. Even though Gohan knew that giving Zhu Wu's blood essence to Ying Zheng was a slow-acting poison, he had no choice but to agree to the deal. Otherwise, the human race would be forced to drink a bottle of acute poison. Excellent! Ying Zheng laughed even more happily. He had finally achieved the goal that he had been hoping to achieve for a long time. How are we going to make the deal? But very soon, Ying Zheng thought of another tricky problem, and that was how to make a safe deal between both parties. What Ying Zheng needed was the blood essence of Zhu Wu in Gohan's hands, and what Gohan needed was Ying Zheng to transfer the position of Taiying Garrison and Sun Garrison to him. So, there was a question of who would come first. Would Gohan give Zhu Wu's blood essence to Ying Zheng first, or would Ying Zheng give Gohan the position of Guardian of Lunar Garrison first? The whole process was full of deception and deception. Neither Gohan nor Ingzheng was a man of integrity. Whether it was Gohan handing over Zhu Wu's blood essence first, or Ingzheng handing over the position of guardian of lunar garrison first, if the latter were to shamelessly deny it, the former would not be able to do anything to the latter. Of course, you could say that both parties made a deal at the same time. When Gohan threw out Zhu Wu's blood essence, Yaoguang would also break his great Zhou star banner. Wouldn't that be a perfect deal? But there was also a problem in this. If Ingzheng broke the great Zhou star's hour banner and asked Hong Yu to break the great Zhou star's hour banner at the same time, Gohan would suffer a complete defeat. How about this? Ingzheng put forward an idea. First, you give me 10 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence, then I'll ask Hong Yu to break her Sun Star banner of Zhou Star and make your girlfriend the guardian of Sun Star. After that, you'll give me the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence. What do you think? Honestly speaking, Ingzheng's idea was not a bad one. At the same time, it took into consideration the interests of both parties, and allowed both parties to have a peace of mind when making the deal. Of course, Ingzheng would still be at a slight disadvantage, because once Liu Yanling took over the position of the guardian of Sun Star, it would not matter whether Ingzheng broke the great Zhou star's hour banner of Lunar Star or not. After all, there would be no problem with the Zhou star formation. At this point, if Gohan refused to give Ingzheng the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence, Ingzheng would never be able to get the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence, and there was a high possibility that Ingzheng would never be able to become Zhu Wu. Of course, there was a possibility that the 12 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence were just a disguise, and Ingzheng only needed 10 or 11 drops to become the new Zhu Wu. But no matter what, this was indeed the safest and most reasonable way that Ingzheng could come up with. There's no need to go through so much trouble. With a cold face, Gohan took out the test tube containing Zhu Wu's blood essence from his dimensional pocket, opened it, and directly let out all the Zhu Wu's blood essence. After that, he used his sword energy to roll up a breeze, blowing all the Zhu Wu's blood essence right in front of Ingzheng. Gohan, what are you doing? Upon seeing this, Liu Yanling panicked. She kept shaking Gohan's arm and asked, "Are you really going to give him Zhu Wu's blood essence just like that? What if he is lying to us?" "You are giving it to me just like that." Ingzheng found it hard to believe as well. He could not control the excitement in his body. Blinking his eyes frequently, he looked at the Zhu Wu's blood essence floating in front of him, and asked Gohan with a trembling voice. If not for the fact that he was absolutely sure that this was a drop of black blood essence, and was indeed the genuine Zhu Wu's blood essence, he would not believe that Gohan would give Zhu Wu's blood essence to him so easily. "I believe you. After all, you are the first emperor of a generation, and a monarch never goes back on his words." Gohan pressed down on Liu Yanling's arm, which was grabbing onto his arm, and said coldly, "Now, it's time for me to see if the first emperor of a generation is a monarch who never goes back on his words. Of course. I have always been a man of my word." Ingzheng seemed to be touched. He was not in a hurry to keep the Zhu Wu's blood essence. Instead, he closed his eyes. At the same time, a blue flag was slowly rising above Ingzheng's head. This flag was none other than the great Zhou star's star banner of Taiyin Star. Gotcha! After the great Zhou star's star banner was completely raised, Yaoguang grabbed it in his hand and broke it into two without any hesitation. "You can go to the Taiyin Star garrison to get the brand new great Zhou star's star banner of Taiyin Star and inherit the position of the guardian of Taiyin Star. I will ask Hong Yu to break the great Zhou star's star banner of Taiyin Star tomorrow morning. That way, your girlfriend can inherit the throne of the guardian of Taiyin Star." Ingzheng said in a very caring manner. "No need. I've brought it with me." Under Ingzheng's surprised gaze, Gohan took out a brand new great Zhou star's star banner from his dimensional pocket, then inserted it into his own Z Palace. After a short period of fusion, the position of the Guardian of Tian's Star had finally been replaced, and the new Guardian of Tian's Star was born. At the same time when Gohan was fusing with the great Zhou Star's star banner, Ying waved his hand and absorbed all the Zhu Wu's blood essence into his own body. At the moment when the Zhu Wu's blood essence entered his body, Ying's face flushed, and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. It seemed that absorbing the Zhu Wu's blood essence with his own body was a huge burden for Ying. At the moment when the Zhu Wu's blood essence entered his body, Ying was seriously injured. It seemed that Ying still had a long way to go before he could fully absorb all the Zhu Wu's blood essence. In this way, this important transaction was considered to have ended without mishap. I understand now. You've actually guessed my true identity, so you've already made up your mind to complete the replacement of the Guardian of Tian's Star here, am I right? After the transaction was completed, Ying looked at the new Guardian of Tian's Star, Gohan, and said with a bitter tone, "I was going to kill you, but I didn't expect that I would have to do it in this way." After recovering, Gohan shrugged his shoulders. "Good. Not bad. I hope we will not be opponents in the future, but real friends." He burst into a loud laughter, and then Hong Yu also forced out the great Zhou Star's star banner from her body, then broke it into pieces. However, as Gohan did not have the great Zhou Star's star banner with him, it was naturally impossible for Liu Ling to take over the position of the Sun's Guardian. But it was not a bad thing, as long as the Zhou Star battle formation was not destroyed, and Liu Ling was not in a hurry to take over the position. Well, it's time for me to go to the last mausoleum. See you later. Ying nodded at Gohan and was about to leave. Wait! Gohan suddenly stopped, looked at Hong Yu, and said something that shocked Liu Ling. Hong Yu is actually your sword maiden, right? Are you a human or a ghost? I can't believe you even guessed this. How did you figure it out? Ying was so shocked that his eyeballs nearly popped out from their sockets. He never thought that Gohan would expose Hong Yu's identity so easily. Actually, I already felt that Hong Yu was a little strange in the game, but I didn't know why. Until today, when this happened, I finally figured out the whole thing. Unfortunately, it was a little too late. Gohan shook his head helplessly. I don't know if you remember, but there is a rule in the game that a player must never have the same name as a sword maiden. Just like that guy from the Ghost Sword sect named Huang Tujian. He said that he originally wanted to name himself Huang Tujian, but because it was the same name as the sword maiden, Huang Tujian, he could only change it to this ridiculous name. At this point, Gohan paused for a moment. Hong Yu's sword maiden is Hong Yu, which is obviously a violation of the naming rule. More importantly, just like Yi Fan, I've never seen Hong Yu release her sword maiden. Hong Yu has always been fighting in the form of a sword master. I didn't understand it at first, but now I understand. Hong Yu is the sword maiden, and the sword maiden is Hong Yu. That's why Hong Yu can exist in the game under the name Hong Yu, and that's why Hong Yu has always been fighting in the form of a sword master. It's impossible for her to conjure a second sword maiden, Hong Yu. That's why Hong Yu can't disobey any of your orders. However, what I don't understand is why, as a sword maiden, Hong Yu has the ability that only humans can have. How can she fuse with the Zhou Star battle formation? Gohan voiced out the question in his heart. Since you've figured it out, I might as well tell you. In fact, this is an accident that even I didn't expect. Ying hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he still decided to answer Gohan's question. However, the first sentence that came out of Ying's mouth shocked Gohan. I wonder if you've heard of a technique called Sword Maiden Grafting Technique? Sword Maiden Grafting Technique. Gohan repeated the name a few times. Gohan only knew about this technique, and he was the direct user of it. In the game, the King of Yugo Jian sword, the current Qi Dian sword, and the Doyu sword were actually all made by Gu Han using the Great Sword Maiden's grafting technique to become Gu Han's Sword Maidens. Otherwise, Gu Han wouldn't have been able to have 6 Sword Maidens as a famed sword wielder. However, Gu Han had always thought that the Sword Maiden grafting technique was an original technique of his Gu family. He didn't expect Ing Zheng to know about this technique. This made the situation even more confusing. Chapter 1044. The Great Sword Maiden grafting technique is a good thing. It allows the wielder to break through the limit of the Sword Maidens they have and obtain an additional one. Ing Zheng looked at Gu Han and smiled. Gu Han, if you want, I can teach you this technique for free. After all, we are good friends. Forget it. I'm not interested, Gu Han said calmly. That's a pity. Ing Zheng shrugged. I spent a lot of effort to get it from Fleeting Calendar. I didn't expect you to look down on it. Kanzu? Gu Han looked at Liuyan Ling in confusion. Does Kanzu also know the Great Sword Maiden grafting technique? Yes. Liuyan Ling nodded. I've seen it in the internal information. Our ancestor indeed knows the Great Sword Maiden grafting technique. However, he warned his descendants that the Great Sword Maiden grafting technique is a very evil technique that must never be spread out. That's why he didn't teach it to his descendants. I've always thought that the Great Sword Maiden grafting technique had completely disappeared. I didn't expect it to still be circulating. To be honest, the Great Sword Maiden grafting technique created by Kanzu isn't that great. Not only can it not leave a deep mark, but it also sometimes doesn't listen to commands and likes to make things difficult for me. Ing Zheng shook his head helplessly and said, Thanks to my great talent, I've slightly modified this grafting Sword Maiden grand magic, and with that, I can have a Sword Maiden who is as obedient as you, and looks like a real human being. It is extremely convenient. So, Gu Han, are you sure you don't want to learn the modified grafting Sword Maiden grand magic? There's no need for that. Gu Han rejected Ing Zheng once again, leaving a look of pity on Ing Zheng's face. Then what's with these Qing dynasty emperors? Why did they appear here as a group? Don't tell me it's just a coincidence. Gu Han pointed at the Qing dynasty emperors who were still trapped by Ing Zheng. They are just the sacrificial offerings used by those great magi for their resurrection. Ing Zheng spread his arms and said, You've also noticed that the resurrection time of these great magi is much shorter than before, right? That's because they forcefully squeezed the power of Zhu Wu's blood essence to speed up their own resurrection. What does the power that squeezed out Zhu Wu's blood have to do with the emperors of the Qing dynasty? Liuyan Ling asked in confusion. Miss Ling, why do you think these great wizards hid Zhu Wu's blood essence in this underground palace? Was it just because this place was very secretive? You may not know this, but other than Nurachi and Huang Taiji's tombs, which are indeed in Shanhai Pass, all the other tombs are actually in the pass, which is the area near the old Yanjing city. Before the Zhu Wus were sealed by the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation, they forcibly moved those tombs to Shanhai Pass with a great magical power, so that they could store a drop of their Zhu Wu's blood essence in the corpses of these emperors. Because only the corpses that have been stained with the fate of the human emperor and are the descendants of the Wu people can ensure that Zhu Wu's blood essence can be preserved for a long time, and its power will not gradually dissipate over time. Apart from the emperors of the Qing dynasty, no other dynasty under the heaven can gather together 12 emperors who have the blood of the Wu people. My great Qin can't even gather one, because until now, I still haven't found the tombs of my poor son, Hu Hai, and my grandson, Ziying. Perhaps their bones have been burned to ashes by that guy, Xiang Yu. When talking about his son and grandson, Ing Zheng did not show any sad emotion. Obviously, the past 3,000 years had almost worn away his familial ties. And if you want to speed up the resurrection of the Grand Magus with Zhu Wu's blood essence, the best way is, of course, to sacrifice the souls of the Wu people's human emperor, who nurtured this drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence, to Zhu Wu's blood essence. Ing Zheng looked at the emperors of the Qing dynasty, his face filled with endless mockery. They are nothing but sacrificial offerings summoned from another dimension through a mystic technique. Originally, Jiufeng planned to bring these emperors here afternoon today, and then sacrifice them to Zhu Wu's blood essence. But you came one step earlier and killed Jiufeng instead, depriving these grand magi who were sacrificed to the emperors of the Qing dynasty. That's why they were lucky enough to survive. That's why Xingtian and the other 10 grand magi risked their lives to send Jiufeng away from the Taiying garrison, Gohan said thoughtfully. No wonder the grand magi had to find a way to send a grand magus away. It turned out that they wanted to protect a grand magus who could help them resurrect earlier. It seems you're the one who told the Wu people this method. Gohan stared coldly at Ing Zheng and said, otherwise, why didn't the Wu people use this method to speed up the resurrection of the Grand Magi in the past 100 years? I had no choice. In order to win their trust, these things had to be done. It took me several hundred years to come up with this method. When Ing Zheng finished speaking, the net that trapped the emperors of the Qing dynasty suddenly emitted a flash of golden lightning. In an instant, the emperors who were still struggling in the net were turned into a pile of charcoal and died in the net. After that, a dimensional vortex appeared and sent the corpses of the emperors back. Alright, it's time for me to go. I still need to go to Chang'e and take the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence away. After that, Ing Zheng walked toward the blood formation on the wall. Wait, did you forget something? Gohan stopped Ing Zheng again. Where's the solid black tortoise? You promised me that you would tell me about it. Have you forgotten? I've never said that I must tell you. I think it's better to keep this secret in my heart. I'll come back and make another deal with you when I need your help one day. Ing Zheng replied with a smile on his face. Then I'll make a new deal with you right now. Of course, Gohan would not let Ing Zheng use the solid black tortoise to lure him. Therefore, Gohan decided to take the initiative and make a new deal with Ing Zheng. What are you going to use to make a deal with me? Ing Zheng asked with interest. Ling and I promise to keep what happened today a secret forever. What do you think? Gohan put forward a proposal that Ing Zheng could not refuse. If you are willing to, you will still be the sword-bearer Yaoguang. Today, I saved you from the land of Zhu Wu, and I destroyed all Zhu Wu's blood essence. From now on, there will be no more Zhu Wu's blood essence in this world. You can still be your Yaoguang freely. Or, from today onwards, you can be your Ing Zheng openly. I'll tell the Sword Commission headquarters that I've fallen into a tough battle with the Grand Magi in the land of Zhu Wu. It was you, Ing Zheng, who helped me at the last moment and killed all the Grand Magi. The only traitor of humanity is Yi Fan. You came to this Shanhai Pass just to find Zhu Wu's blood essence, so that you can protect humanity forever after you become Zhu Wu. I believe that as long as you tell me this, humanity will take the initiative to admit that you are a real human being, Ing Zheng, the first emperor of Qin. After you become Zhu Wu, you will be the strongest force of the new generation that can rival Jiandi. You can even ascend to the throne in any Bay city and become the third emperor of humanity. From then on, you will be one of the highest leaders of humanity. With that, it will be much easier for you to become the human emperor again, and you will be able to avoid many debtors. What do you think? Isn't this a good deal? Ing Zheng fell into a deep thought. He had to admit that Gohan's words had indeed moved him, and he was deeply attracted by the conditions Gohan mentioned. But doesn't this mean that you have a handle on me? Ing Zheng snorted coldly. Even if you help me today, you can still expose what happened today to the world at any time in the future. If that happens, won't I be controlled by you? Besides, Gohan is not the only one here today. There is also the young lady of the Lunyan family here. What should I do if she exposes me? There's no one in this world who dares to not believe a word she says. With your Majesty's capabilities, as long as you make great contributions to humanity, No one will dare to doubt you. Even if I expose what happened today in the future, in the face of your Majesty's great contributions, what does this little mistake amount to? Guhan said coolly. Humans are profit-seeking animals. As long as something is beneficial to them, they will look down on its harm. As long as your Majesty is still fighting for humanity, I believe that humans will not take such a small matter to heart. Besides, your Majesty has never really killed any human with your own hands, have you? What Gu Han said was right. As long as Ing Zheng could win the trust of the humans in the early stages, and make great contributions to the human race, then even if today's incident was exposed, it would not have too much of an impact. For example, after Liu Bang became the emperor, would anyone still care about the shameless things he did when he was still a hoodlum? Would anyone still care about the fact that he had deceived Empress Liu and her family to get their support? No one would care about that. They only knew that Ing Zheng's power could protect them. With that, Ing Zheng's position would be as stable as Mount Tai. However, in order to achieve the desired result, the most important thing was to win the trust of the human beings in the early stage. Otherwise, once the Sword Commission judged that Ing Zheng was harboring some unfathomable intention, no matter how many meritorious deeds Ing Zheng had done for the human beings would still suspect that he was harboring some ulterior motive, and if that happened, the human world would never truly accept Ing Zheng. Therefore, to achieve the desired outcome, Guhan had to help Ing Zheng conceal his true intentions. Get your little girlfriend to swear on the reputation of the Liunian family that you won't tell anyone about today's incident for the next 20 years. Then, I will tell you about the black tortoise, Ing Zheng finally said. As a result, everyone's eyes focused on Liunian Ling. Liunian Ling looked at Guhan awkwardly. She lowered her head and said, "No, I have to tell the truth about what happened today. This is the foundation of the Liunian family that has been passed down for thousands of years. How can I, ugh?" Before Liunian Ling could finish, Guhan directly covered her mouth. That's right, he used his mouth to cover her mouth. Chapter 1045. Trust me. When Guhan sealed Liunian Ling's mouth with his own, he whispered to Liunian Ling at the same time, "This is a trap that I've dug for Ing Zheng. If this deal succeeds, I guarantee that Ing Zheng will swallow this bitter fruit sooner or later." Woo-woo. Liunian Ling felt dizzy and her face was flushed. She could not even hear what Guhan was saying. She could only nod her head repeatedly to show that she agreed with Guhan's words. "Thank you." Unexpectedly, not only did Guhan not let go after saying thank you, but he kissed her even more passionately. Hey, hey, hey! Young man, be careful, there is an old man who is more than 3,000 years old here. Ing Zheng said in a very dissatisfied tone. Although Ing Zheng was once an emperor with a harem full of clouds, he was now a real single dog. How could he withstand such provocation? Immediately, he said in a very dissatisfied tone. Ling has agreed. Only then did Guhan reluctantly let go of her mouth. Ing Zheng hurriedly asked Liunian Ling for confirmation. After getting an affirmative guarantee from Liunian Ling, he finally nodded and said, "Very well, this deal is settled. Then tell me everything about Gu Xuanwu now. Do not hide anything," Guhan immediately said excitedly. "Well said." Ing Zheng pondered for a moment, then said with a smile, "I guess you should be a descendant of Gu Xuanwu. That's why you can't wait to know the news about your ancestor." "What's going on? How did Gu Xuanwu become your ancestor? Isn't she your sister?" After hearing Ing Zheng's words, Liunian Ling whispered to Guhan in surprise. "Didn't Gu Xuanwu enter the door of truth and eternity?" Guhan whispered in Liunian Ling's ear. "She must have traveled to the past, and she just happened to meet Gu Xuanwu in the past. That's why Ing Zheng thought that Gu Xuanwu was my ancestor." Ing Zheng continued, "Your ancestor is really powerful. Back then, he and your girlfriend's ancestor, Fleeting Years, dominated the world side by side. Even Fleeting Years was no match for your ancestor in the early days. Before Fleeting Year Calendar became the Sword Emperor, he fought with Gu Xuanwu more than 10 times. Every time, Gu Xuanwu would beat him up. However, Fleeting Year Calendar was really tough. Even if he was beaten up more than 10 times, he would still fight with your ancestor. It was because of this spirit that Fleeting Year Calendar's swordsmanship became better and better. After Fleeting Year Calendar became the Sword Emperor, Gu Xuanwu was gradually unable to defeat him. The three of us used to be very good friends. Of course, I didn't use the name Yingxing. Instead, I called myself Xuanji. I believe you haven't forgotten this name, right? Yingxing said with a smile. The name Xuanji slightly surprised Gohan and Liuyanling. Is the Xuanji you mentioned the old ancestor's old friend, Sword Immortal Xuanji, who went missing? Liuyanling asked in surprise. That's right. I am that Sword Immortal Xuanji. Yingxing nodded. When the Great Destruction began, I was already 75 years old. When I met your old ancestor, I was already 85 years old. When your old ancestor became a Sword Immortal, I was almost 95 years old. With this art of immortality, I can only live up to 95 years old. At the 95th year of my life, I might show signs of wanting to return to my youth at any time. And when the signs appeared, I would have to find a coffin and bury myself in it. Yingxing put on a reminiscing expression. In the end, the signs appeared very suddenly. I didn't even have the time to bid farewell to all my friends. I had no choice but to bury myself in the ground immediately. And this lasted for a full 10 years. After my rebirth, I was only a 1-year-old baby. It was impossible for me to reconnect with the old friends from my previous life. Therefore, according to your records, Sword Immortal Xuanji had indeed gone missing. However, Gu Xuanwu was an exception. Because she was different from the others, I asked her to be my adoptive mother. The word adoptive mother made Gohan and Liuyanling's imagination run wild. After I was reborn from the coffin, I was just a baby who had lost all my strength. Someone had to dig me out from the coffin and raise me until I was 12 years old. Only then can I gradually regain my strength. The person who raised me will be known as my adoptive mother or adoptive father. Yingxing let out a long sigh. This person has to be someone I trust absolutely. Otherwise, if he has any evil thoughts, I'm afraid I'll have to rest forever in the ground. Every time I have to choose an adoptive father or a adoptive mother, it's always a headache for me. I can only spend several dozens of years observing a person, and only then can I know if he is truly worthy of being entrusted to me. Before the Great Destruction, I could still ask the Wu people to help me. After the Great Destruction, most of the Wu people have died, and I can only ask the humans for help. Fortunately, for the past 1,000 years, I didn't choose the wrong person, and I was saved every single time. And Gu Xuanwu was the first adoptive mother I chose after the Great Destruction. However, when I was saved by Gu Xuanwu, she wasn't in a good condition. She was being hunted by someone, not by Yuan Ko, but by the humans. Among the humans who were hunting her, there were even 2 invincible existences, Half-Day Jiendi and High Saint Jiendi. At that time, including Kanzu, there were only 5 Jiendi among the humans, and 2 of them were hunting Gu Xuanwu. Gu Xuanwu was really unlucky. Therefore, even under such circumstances, she still thought of digging me out from my grave. I'm really grateful to her. When he said this, a grateful expression emerged on Yingxing's face. You're saying, the human Jiendi is hunting Gu Xuanwu? Gohan asked in disbelief. Why? Why are the humans hunting her? What did she do? I don't know about that. Yingxing spread out his hands. I was only dug out by Gu Xuanwu. She was on the run, so she didn't have the time to take care of me. She could only temporarily place me on Mount Wudong, and let Heavenly Master Zhijing and a bunch of old Taoists take care of me. I lived on Mount Wudong for 18 years. Oh yes, you've played the Wudong Pinnacle Dungeon. You should know the environment there. It's so isolated that not even a sword-bearer from Yanjing City has been there. I couldn't find any news about Gu Xuanwu. Later, I grew up on Mount Wudong until I was 18 years old. I really couldn't stand staying on the mountain, so I changed my name to Daoist Tai'er and left Mount Wudong. After going through untold hardships, I finally returned to Yanjing City. After that, I never returned to Mount Wudong. When Mount Wudong suffered a calamity, I happened to be reborn for the second time. Later, I met with the descendants of Wudong a few times and found that they were living the lives of ordinary people. I didn't ask much about them and haven't contacted them for more than 700 years. Hearing this, Gohan sighed. He didn't expect Mount Wudong to have such a connection with Yingzheng. But since Gu Xuanwu was willing to entrust Yingzheng to Mount Wudong, it meant that Mount Wudong actually had a deep connection with Gu Xuanwu. It seemed that he had to find that little brat of Wudong and see if he had any information about Gu Xuanwu. When I returned to Yanjing City under the name of Daoister to inquire about Gu Xuanwu, I found that all the news about Gu Xuanwu had disappeared, as if Gu Xuanwu didn't exist in this world. Although Gu Xuanwu's incarnation of Sword Immortal Black Tortoise is very low-key, and few ordinary people know the name Sword Immortal Black Tortoise. But among the sword-bearers, Sword Immortal Black Tortoise is very famous. The higher the rank of the sword-bearer, the clearer they know about Sword Immortal Black Tortoise. Back then, Sword Immortal Black Tortoise, Sword Immortal Grand Architect, and Sword Immortal Fleeting Time had done many earth-shattering things, and killed many Yuan-Kos who had wreaked havoc in the world. These ordinary people may not know, but the sword-bearers do. I really couldn't understand how Sword Immortal Black Tortoise could just disappear without a trace. Later, I heard that Fleeting Time had gone crazy and started something called the Culture Apocalypse, destroying a lot of culture and history. Only then did I understand that Fleeting Time was the mastermind behind all this. It was Fleeting Time who started the Culture Apocalypse in order to hide all the news about Gu Xuanwu. Yingzheng's revelation stunned Gohan and Liuyan Ling once again. Neither of them had expected that the real reason for the Culture Apocalypse was to hide the news about Gu Xuanwu. Gohan was fine. In fact, he already had some guesses in his mind. When he found out that the news about his ancestor had been deliberately erased, he guessed that it was the doing of some super-powerful force, and he also guessed that it was the Fleeting Time clan. But Gohan really did not expect that it was Kanzu Fleeting Time Calendar who had directly given the order. The reason for the Culture Apocalypse, which caused the entire human society to lose all its culture and history to a terrifying extent, was actually to erase all the news about his ancestor. And this ancestor was not Gohan's ancestor, but Gohan's daughter. There were just too many twists and turns. Impossible. The Kanzu would never do such a thing. This is all a misunderstanding. It's because my ancestor believed that by erasing all culture and history, the Yuan-Ko would disappear. It's because of this that my ancestor mistakenly initiated the Culture Apocalypse. This has nothing to do with Gu Xuanwu. Liuyan Ling immediately shrieked in dissatisfaction. She would not allow Yingzheng to slander her ancestor like this. Sigh. There are 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 people's eyes. I'm only speaking my opinion. As for what you think, that's your own business. It has nothing to do with me. In any case, I believe that Fleeting Time Calendar initiated the Culture Apocalypse to erase everything about Gu Xuanwu. By the way, I'm sure you don't even know what Hamlet is, because the Culture Apocalypse has already erased Hamlet completely. Yingzheng said in a mocking tone. This was how history was. When it was uncovered layer by layer by those who experienced it, you would discover that history was actually a strange farce. Chapter 1046. Actually, I don't have any clear evidence to prove that the great cultural destruction was caused by the black tortoise. No ordinary person knows anything about the black tortoise, and the surviving sword-bearers are all afraid to talk about it. Even with my methods, I can't force the sword-bearers to tell the truth. It seems that some kind of restriction has been planted in their mind. This is a common method used by the demon race. It can completely seal off a person's memory. Even if you search the other person's soul, you won't be able to find the truth. So, all of this is just my speculation based on some clues. So, I don't have any evidence to prove the truth. You can just ignore what I said. I don't care. In fact, Gohan knew very well that even if Ing Zheng did not have any evidence, as long as Ing Zheng did not lie, there was a high chance that the great cultural destruction was caused by the Black Tortoise. Gohan could not help but recall what happened in the Radiant Amusement Park that day. It was Kenzu who forced the Black Tortoise into the Gate of Truth and Eternity. Obviously, Kenzu hoped that the Black Tortoise could return to the past. There must have been a lot of grudges between the Black Tortoise and Kenzu in the past that no one knew about. However, it seemed that Kenzu did not really hate the Black Tortoise. Otherwise, Kenzu would not have handed over the role of leveler to Gohan so calmly. Moreover, he would not have helped Gohan in the game, helping Gohan's swordsmanship to grow faster and reach a level that even Gohan could not imagine. If Ing Zheng had not threatened Gohan with the Zhou Tian star battle formation, Gohan would not have chosen to compromise with Ing Zheng. Unfortunately, when Gohan and Kenzu were together in the game, no matter how Gohan probed, Kenzu never revealed anything about him and the Black Tortoise. When Gohan left the game, Kenzu told Gohan that he would never meet Gohan in the game again. Their fate had ended. Therefore, it was impossible for Gohan to get the truth from Kenzu. Only Ing Zheng could reveal part of the truth. So, your fate with my ancestor ends here? Gohan asked expectantly. He was hoping that Ing Zheng could reveal more information about the Black Tortoise. I'm not sure about that. Ing Zheng wore a thoughtful expression. I remember it was my fourth resurrection after the Great Calamity, which happened about 400 years after the Great Calamity. It happened to be the most intense time of the Alps War. In order to protect the human race from being wiped out, I secretly lurked in the Alps mountains. I made up my mind that if the human race was in danger of being wiped out during the war, I would have to lend them a hand. I remember it was during the Battle of Matterhorn. At that time, the human race was facing the continuous attacks of 3 desolate-level Yuan Ko. Blood Wan Jiendi and Jili Jiendi, the mother and son, Jiendi, could not hold them off at all. Blood Wan Jiendi even broke his own immortal-level sword Maiden Immortal Slaying Sword. I even felt that the human race was on the brink of annihilation. Just when I was about to lend a hand, a mysterious man slashed down from the sky. With just one slash, the desolate-level Yuan Ko Virokana had his triflowers cut off. Virokana was so scared that he immediately fled back to Spirited Mountain. He hasn't recovered even until now, and is still hiding in Spirited Mountain to heal his wounds. Ing Zheng recounted an exciting scene that had been constantly embellished in many web novels, television dramas, and movies. In fact, just as Ing Zheng had said, the Battle of the Alps was unprecedentedly tragic. Almost half of the human sword-bearers had died in the battle. Out of the 36 immortal-level sword-bearers before the battle, only 9 were left after the battle. One of the Emperor's sword-bearers had died in the battle, and another had broken his own sword. Only Jili Jiendi was left with his full combat power. If not for the fact that Yuan Ko had also sacrificed himself in the Battle of the Alps, the human race would have probably been annihilated. The Battle of Matterhorn was the most important battle in the Battle of the Alps. At that time, the humans had just been ambushed by Yuan Ko at the Great St. Bernard Mountain Pass. A total of 12 immortal-level sword-bearers had died in the battle. In order to cover the retreat of the rest of the main human force, Holy Light Jiendi had fought against 3 desolate-level Yuan Ko alone. In the end, he had died a heroic death. His blood had dyed the entire Great St. Bernard Mountain Pass gold. Even now, the great St. Bernard mountain pass was still golden. After the ambush at the great St. Bernard mountain pass, Yuan Ko had prepared to launch an all-out attack on the humans. Therefore, the Battle of Matterhorn Mountain Pass had begun. At that time, the humans had gathered the last of their strength and fought with the determination to die. Although no one was afraid of death, and the humans had fought very tenaciously, the difference in strength was still too great. Just as the Battle of Matterhorn Mountain Pass was about to end, a sword light suddenly flew from the sky. In a millionth of a second, it had hit the strongest of the three desolate-level Yuan Ko Vairocana. He was a powerful Yuanko who was on equal footing with the Jade Emperor of the Heavenly Court. The spirited mountain that he belonged to had even suppressed the Heavenly Court for a time. However, because of this sword, Mahavairocana's head was directly chopped off. Although Vairocana's head quickly grew back, Vairocana's power began to drop drastically. He dropped from desolate-level Yuan Ko to universe-level Yuan Ko. He dropped a whole realm and 4 small realms. Since then, it was said that Vairocana had been hiding in the spirited mountain and had never stepped out of it. Most of the Yuan Ko who belonged to the spirited mountain died in the Battle of the Alps, and the rest were annexed by the Heavenly Court. The spirited mountain only had Vairocana and a few kittens and puppies left. It was considered to have completely declined and no longer appeared in the human world. At that time, Vairocana didn't dare to fight anymore and directly fled back to the spirited mountain. Without Vairocana, the human Jiendi began to counterattack Yuan Ko. The remaining 2 desolate-level Yuan Ko struggled to resist Jiendi's desperate attacks while guarding against the next sword energy that could appear at any time in the sky. Therefore, after fighting for a couple of hours, they chose to retreat and leave the battlefield at the same time. Without the protection of the desolate-level Yuan Ko, Jiendi directly joined the battle against the other Yuan Ko levels. The result of the battle was obvious. Except for some universe-level and universe-level Yuan Ko who escaped by luck, the rest of the Yuan Ko almost all died in the Matterhorn. The Battle of the Alps Mountains suddenly ended, and the humans finally won a Pyrrhic victory. At this point, the humans had survived the first difficult sword era and flourished again after more than 100 years of development. Therefore, where did the sword energy that saved the entire Alps mountain battle come from? Was it the sword-bearer of the humans, or was it the heavens who couldn't bear to see the destruction of the humans and sent down help? Humans debated this for a very long time. If the owner of the sword Chi was a human, first of all, this human's strength was so terrifying that it was invincible. Just one strike was enough to make Mahavairocana fall to the level of universe-level Yuan Ko. This was no different from killing Mahavairocana. Killing a desolate-level Yuan Ko with one strike was something that Kanzu couldn't do at his peak. This meant that the owner of the sword Chi had surpassed the level of an emperor sword wielder and reached a level that humans couldn't even imagine. Putting aside whether this kind of state existed or not, if the owner of this sword Chi was really a human being, as long as the owner of this sword Chi took action, it would not be a problem for humans to wipe out all the Yuan Kos in the world. It was only a matter of time before all the Yuan Kos were driven out of Earth and the Earth was back in the hands of humans. In that case, why did this human hide in the dark? Why didn't he help his compatriots? If this was a miracle sent by God to help humans, come on, almost all the gods in myths and religious legends had turned into Yuan Ko and descended into this world. Jade Emperor, Mahavairocana, Jehovairocana. Other than Allah, almost all the gods of mainstream religions had appeared. Would there really be gods in this world who were willing to help humans? Even humans didn't believe this. Therefore, in the end, humans still didn't know who the owner of the sword Chi was. They could only guess that it was a neutral party that didn't want to see humans perish, but also didn't want to see Yuan Ko perish. However, this neutral party was different from the Freedom Metropolis. The Freedom Metropolis didn't participate in any disputes between humans and Yuan Ko, but this existence helped humans in the end. Until now, 600 years later, humans still had no clue. They didn't expect to get some clues from Ying. Recalling the battle, Ying could not help but have a look of lingering fear on his face. He continued, although the mysterious person who wielded the sword has never shown herself, and I have never seen her figure, I am very familiar with that sword energy. It is the ultimate skill of the Black Tortoise, the eternal truth. It is the ultimate skill of the Black Tortoise. I have seen him use it once, and I will never forget the power of that skill for the rest of my life. It's just that compared to when I saw that move, the eternal truth in the Alps battle was countless times more powerful. Therefore, I dare to guess that the person who attacked was none other than Gu Xuanwu. Even after 400 years, she's still alive in this world. She must have found a way to surpass Jiandi, and that's how she became immortal. Maybe Fleeting Time Calendar and the other Jiandi betrayed Gu Xuanwu in order to snatch the way to surpass Jiandi from Gu Xuanwu. Then, to cover up his crime, Fleeting Time Calendar shamelessly covered up all the history. Ying said with certainty. Chapter 1047. After talking about the Black Tortoise, Ying immediately activated the blood magic formation and brought Hong Yu to another underground palace to look for the last grand shaman, Chang'e. Meanwhile, Gohan and Liuyan Ling waited quietly for Yaoguang's return in this underground palace. About an hour later, Ying came back with a face full of bad luck. It turned out that the Grand Shaman, Chang'e, had run away with the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence. Shanhai Pass was a huge place, and it was impossible for Ying to find Chang'e's current location. Therefore, the last drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence was completely lost. Left with no choice, they could only return to the Taiyin Star Garrison according to their original plan. When Gohan, Liuyan Ling, Yaoguang, and Hong Yu returned to the Taiyin Star Garrison, the entire Shanhai Pass was in an uproar. None of the sword-bearers had expected Gohan to single-handedly rescue Liuyan Ling and Yaoguang. The Shanhai Pass Administrative Committee immediately reported the news of Liuyan Ling's rescue to the Liuyan clan. However, they heard that the Liuyan clan was very calm. After all, for the Liuyan clan, their heirs had been in danger of losing their lives many times over the past 1,000 years, but they always managed to survive. So, the Liuyan clan had gradually become indifferent to it. After expressing their gratitude to the Shanhai Pass Administrative Committee, they hung up the communication. After that, Gu Han immediately contacted the Shanhai Pass Management Committee and the Sword Committee headquarters. According to the story he had discussed with Ying in the underground palace, he reported to the Shanhai Pass Management Committee and the Sword Committee headquarters that the Grand Sorcerer had been resurrected in the land of ancestral sorcerers, and that he, Yao Guang, who he had rescued, and Hong Yu, the guardian of the Sun Star who had come from afar, were going to fight together. In the end, the 12 Grand Shamans gained a great advantage with the power of Zhu Wu's blood essence. Gohan, Ying, and Hong Yu were gradually losing ground. Hong Yu was severely injured, so Ying had to reveal his identity as Emperor Qin and the Wu people. He forcibly absorbed all of Zhu Wu's blood essence and defeated the 12 Grand Shamans, killing 11 of them. However, the last Grand Shaman, Chang'e, escaped. As Hong Yu was severely injured, she could no longer assume the position of the guardian of the Sun Star. So, Hong Yu broke her great Zhou Tian Star banner and passed the position to Liuyan Ling. Ying also passed the position of the guardian of the Sun Star to Gohan. At first, the Sword Committee headquarters did not believe Gohan's story. They found it hard to believe that the Qin Shi Huang from 3,000 years ago was still alive in this world. But when Ying told them many secrets that could only be known by those who had personally experienced it, and brought out many pieces of evidence that could only be found in that era, including a video of himself celebrating his birthday with the fleeting calendar, and a bottle of Emperor's blood that he had carefully kept, the Sword Committee headquarters had no choice but to change their attitude from disbelief to skepticism. Therefore, the Sword Committee headquarters and the Administrative Committee of Shanghai Pass ordered Ying Zheng to return to the Sword Committee headquarters immediately to be questioned by them, while Guhan and Liuyan Ling stayed in Shanghai Pass with peace of mind, commanding the Tian Star Garrison and the Sun Star Garrison, maintaining the basic order of the management, while waiting for the investigation team from the Sword Committee headquarters to be stationed in Shanghai Pass. However, Ying Zheng did not leave Shanghai Pass immediately. Instead, he stayed in Shanghai Pass, searching through every grass and tree in the city, trying to find the last trace of the Grand Shaman, Chang Yi. Unfortunately, even when the investigation team was stationed in Shanghai Pass, Ying Zheng still could not find any trace of Chang Yi. He had no choice but to leave Shanghai Pass gloomily. However, Guhan noticed that Ying Zheng did not look too depressed. This meant that either Ying Zheng was able to achieve the realm of Zhu Wu with just 11 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence, or Ying Zheng had some other way to get his hands on Zhu Wu's blood essence. But no matter what the result was, Guhan had nothing to do with Ying Zheng for the time being. Back to the night of the battle in the land of Zhu Wu. After dealing with the Shanghai Pass Administrative Committee and the Sword Committee headquarters, it was already late at night. Guhan felt like his head was about to explode. Although he had already guessed that Gu Xianwu would have such a conflict with Kenzu after he returned to the past, he did not expect that the conflict would be so deep. Kenzu had activated the Great Cultural Destruction for Gu Xianwu, and Gu Xianwu might have surpassed the Emperor's sword-level sword-bearers and reached an unprecedented height. But at the same time, this gave Guhan a glimmer of hope. Since Gu Xianwu had surpassed Jiandi and was still alive after 400 years, was it possible that Gu Xianwu was still alive somewhere in this world? While Guhan was thinking about Gu Xianwu, Liuyan Ling was not having a good time either. She could not believe that her ancestor had activated the Great Cultural Destruction for Gu Xianwu. After tossing and turning in bed for 2 hours, she could not help but call her grandfather, Fleeting Wooden Fish. "What's wrong, my precious granddaughter?" Fleeting Wooden Fish appeared in front of Liuyan Ling with a smile. He first looked at Liuyan Ling carefully through the virtual image. After making sure that Liuyan Ling was not missing an arm or a leg and that the amulet on her neck was still there, he smiled happily. "I knew that my precious granddaughter would come back safe and sound. How can the heir of the Liuyan family not experience any hardships?" During the few days that Liuyan Ling had been missing, Fleeting Wooden Fish and the Liuyan family had been very calm. However, only Fleeting Wooden Fish knew how worried they were. "Grandpa!" Liuyan Ling knew that Fleeting Wooden Fish's words were filled with concern and concern. She could not help but ask, "Grandpa, Ling has a question that I'm not sure if I should ask?" "Ask away. There's nothing that Grandpa can't answer." Fleeting Wooden Fish chuckled as he stroked his beard. Lin, I'm guessing that you're going to ask your grandfather if Ying Zheng is the same Qin Shi Huang from 3,000 years ago." Although Grandpa didn't believe that a person could live for 3,000 years, Fleeting Years Monogatari clearly stated that he had once dated Emperor Qin Shi Huang Ying Zheng. Furthermore, they were good friends and had even become sworn brothers. "I didn't think that he would still be alive, and that you would have the chance to meet him, Ling." "What a joke." "Grandpa, I'm afraid that there were more than 2 people who became sworn brothers with our ancestor." Liuyan Ling spoke up. Fleeting Wooden Fish was completely stunned. He could not help but ask after a long moment of silence, "Ling, did that Ying Zheng tell you something that's not true?" "I don't know if it's true or not, but he just told me that there weren't 2 people who were defeated by the old ancestor, but 3 people, and one of them was called Gu Xuanwu." Fleeting Time Lin said loudly. "Ridiculous. You're talking nonsense." Fleeting Wooden Fish immediately retorted, "Ying Zheng has lived for more than 3,000 years, and has been reincarnated over and over again. He's long gone mad, and everything he says is full of lies. Don't believe him. How could our Kanzu have become sworn brothers with a woman called Gu Xuanwu? Oh, I remember you once told Grandpa that Gu Xuanwu is Gohan's sister. How could she have gone back 1,000 years to become sworn brothers with our ancestor? Grandpa, did I tell you that Gu Xuanwu is a woman? Fleeting Wooden Fish was once again rendered speechless by Fleeting Time Lin's question. To think that even a sly old fox like him would slip up. Grandpa, I've never told you this, but I saw Gu Xuanwu enter the door of truth and eternity. I also saw our ancestor's sword soul pull her into the door of truth and eternity. I saw everything, and I'm sure that Gu Xuanwu has returned to the past, to our ancestors' era. I saw it all with my own eyes, roared Liuyan Ling. If not for the soundproofing in the Sun Star Garrison, the entire Sun Star Garrison would have heard her. Also, Ying Zheng told me that our ancestor had betrayed his sworn sister in the end. He was the one who sent people to hunt down Gu Xuanwu. In order to hide Gu Xuanwu, he even deliberately created the Great Cultural Destruction. It was our ancestor who destroyed the entire human civilization with his own hands, all to hide his crimes. Liuyan Ling could no longer hold back her tears and began to wail. Grandpa, tell me, is this true? Is our ancestor really that kind of person? I'm so sad, so sad. Fleeting Lin fell to his knees and cried. That's right, I'm so sad. Fleeting Lin cried. Nonsense. It's fake, it's all fake. Fleeting Wooden Fish panicked. He tried to help Fleeting Time Ling up, but he had forgotten that he was only a hologram. He could only grab onto thin air. Ying Zheng was still sleeping in the graveyard when those things happened. How would he know what happened? He doesn't know anything at all. It's all just his irresponsible speculation, retorted Fleeting Wooden Fish, but his retort only made Liuyan Ling cry even harder. Liuyan Ling discovered that Fleeting Wooden Fish knew exactly when Ying Zheng entered the graveyard and was reborn. This proved that Ying Zheng was telling the truth. Ying Zheng, Fleeting Wooden Fish, and Gu Xuanwu were sworn siblings. It was also true that someone was chasing after Gu Xuanwu. All of this was real. Ling, listen to Grandpa. There are many things that you don't know about this. Fleeting Wooden Fish realized that he had let the cat out of the bag, and immediately tried to salvage the situation. Grandpa can promise you that our ancestor would never cause the great cultural destruction just for Gu Xuanwu. Our ancestor was really deceived. He thought that all of the human civilization would be enough to destroy the foundation of Yuan Ko's existence. He was really deceived. Fleeting Wooden Fish stomped his feet as he spoke, trying to make himself more convincing. Grandpa, I want to see Fleeting Monogatari with my own eyes, said Liuyan Ling suddenly after a long period of crying. Chapter 1048. Fleeting Time Monogatari was the absolute secret of the Lunyan family. It was said that Fleeting Time had a premonition of his impending doom when he participated in the final battle in Sichuan, so he spent 10 days writing it. Fleeting Time Monogatari was equivalent to Kanzu's autobiography. Kanzu had recorded his entire life in Fleeting Time Monogatari, including many of his most secretive matters. At the same time, Fleeting Time Monogatari also recorded many of Kanzu's messages to his descendants, as well as some of his requests. For example, if his descendants were to meet Gilgamesh, they must be killed by his sword spirit. In addition, there were also some prophecies recorded in Fleeting Time Story. It was said that the sword ancestor had predicted all the major events that would happen 3,000 years later in Fleeting Time Story. The Liuyan family had relied on the prophecies in Fleeting Time Story to survive through crisis after crisis. All in all, Fleeting Time Monogatari was an extremely mysterious book. Aside from the Lunyan family and a few other families, no one knew of its existence. Even in the Lunyan family, not everyone had the right to read Fleeting Time Monogatari. According to the rules, Only the head of the family over the age of 60 had the right to read Fleeting Time Monogatari. Thus, in the entire Lunyen family, only Fleeting Time Wooden Fish had read Fleeting Time Monogatari. As for Liunyan Ling's father, he would have to wait another 7 years before he could read Fleeting Time Monogatari, while Liunyan Ling would have to wait another 41 years. Logically speaking, when Liunyan Ling asked Fleeting Time Wooden Fish to read Fleeting Time Monogatari, Fleeting Time Wooden Fish should have rejected her decisively. However, Fleeting Time Wooden Fish hesitated as he recalled a line in Fleeting Time Monogatari. Any descendants who wish to read the Fleeting Time Monogatari after meeting my brother Ing Jing can read the story on page 128 of the Fleeting Time Monogatari. In other words, if any of his descendants from the Fleeting Years calendar met Ing Jing and requested to read the Fleeting story, they would be allowed to browse through the story recorded on page 128 of the Fleeting story. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish did not think much of the words when he first read them. After all, not a single one of his descendants had seen the mysterious Ing Zheng in the past 1,000 years. It was impossible for such a thing to happen while he was still alive. But today, when Fleeting Wooden Fish received news from the Shanhai Pass Management Committee that Ing Zheng had returned to the world, and that Ing Zheng had rescued Liunyan Ling together with Gohan, Fleeting Wooden Fish could not help but think of this, and he began to panic. Just as Fleeting Time Wooden Fish had feared, Ing Zheng had told Liunyan Ling many things, and Liunyan Ling had expressed her desire to read Fleeting Time Monogatari. Forget it. Since the old ancestor has spoken, I can't escape from this. It looks like I'll have to let Ling read page 128. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish felt a headache coming on. The information recorded on page 128 was too important, and Liunyan Ling would not be able to accept it if word of it were to spread. Even Fleeting Time Wooden Fish was shocked for 3 hours when he first read page 128. Fortunately, Fleeting Wooden Fish was already in his 60s at the time. His knowledge and experience were far greater than Fleeting Ling's, which was why he was able to accept the situation calmly. Fleeting Wooden Fish could not imagine what would have happened to Fleeting Wooden Fish when he saw the scene. However, there was one thing that Fleeting Time Wooden Fish was certain of. Once Liunyan Ling finished reading page 128, she and Gohan would become strangers. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish did not know if this was a good or bad thing for Ling. He could only blame the complicated relationship between the Fleeting family and the Gu family. Time passed by quickly. It had been a month since the investigation team from the Union of Swordsmen arrived at Shanhai Pass. Over the past month, the investigation team had repeatedly confirmed that the Sorcerer Tribe's Grand Sorcerers had not been resurrected. Furthermore, the sorcerers who had been killed could not be resurrected. Their blood would only coagulate and turn into a drop of blood. Due to the inability to resurrect, the population of the Wu people was dwindling under the continuous attacks of the swordsmen. Many of the Wu people began to hide in the lush forests to avoid being hunted by the humans. They no longer dared to initiate any attacks on the humans. Because of this, after a month of investigation and confirmation, the investigation team finally came to the conclusion that the blood essence of the Grand Wizard had indeed been completely destroyed, and the Grand Wizard could not be resurrected. Humans could finally be freed from the sad Shanhai Pass that was filled with tears and blood. The results of the investigation caused the entire human society to be in an uproar. People in every city began to sing and dance in celebration of this great victory. Not only did this mean that humans no longer had to worry about their loved ones dying in Shanhai Pass, but it also meant that humans could finally mobilize a huge force from Shanhai Pass. The base cities became safer, and the forces that humans could mobilize also greatly increased. According to the conclusion of a certain expert, due to the impact of the great victory in Shanhai Pass, the strength of humans had increased by about 10% in an instant. This was something that was worth celebrating and dancing for. However, under the influence of some scheming people, the greatest victory was mainly given to two people. One was naturally the young mistress of the Liunian family, Liunian Ling. Without any hesitation, as long as people heard Liunian Ling's name in the list of meritorious contributors, they would naturally give the main credit to Liunian Ling. What a joke! Such an important victory was not won by the great Liunian family, but by that damned Yuzhong bastard, Gohan? The second person was Emperor Qin Shi Huang Yingjing, who had appeared like a comet. In fact, the Sword Council had deliberately concealed the matter of Yingjing. However, when Yingjing returned to Yanjing City for investigation, all kinds of news about Yingjing, be it on the internet or in the newspapers, came crashing down on humans in various ways. In just one day, all the human beings learned that the human emperor 3,000 years ago, the great Emperor Qin Shi Huang, Yingjing, was not dead. Instead, he had lived until now through a miraculous art of immortality, and had been secretly protecting the human race all this time. There were also a lot of photographic evidence in the newspapers, and there were also many videos on the internet of Yingjing with many famous figures in history. For example, there was a video of Yingjing playing chess with the Sword Ancestor. The Sword Ancestor even called Yingjing Big Brother intimately, while Yingjing called the Sword Ancestor Second Brother. There were even 20 to 30 web novels that began to vividly describe all the great things that Yingjing had done in the past 1,000 years. Such overwhelming propaganda forced the humans to quickly accept that one of their ancestors from 3,000 years ago was still alive, and that he was a great savior secretly protecting the human race. It was only then that the Sword Council realized that Yingjing had secretly built up a lot of power over the past 1,000 years, and this power had finally exploded in an instant. There were even many highly respected sword-bearers who came forward to say that they had fought side by side with Yingjing in his previous life. These sword-bearers were telling the truth. They had indeed fought side by side with Yingjing in his previous life. It was something that happened about 60 years ago, but these venerable old sword-bearers were still children in their 20s or 30s, while Yingjing was already an old man in his 80s or 90s at that time. Yingjing and these old sword-bearers all acknowledged each other, and told them many things that had happened in the past, convincing them. These venerable old sword-bearers had a huge network of connections that even the Sword Council found it hard to resist. Therefore, the Council dared not to do anything bad to Yingjing. On top of that, the entire investigation process was broadcasted live on TV. As Yingjing only told those things that had happened in the past, the result of the investigation became clearer and clearer, and the fact that Yingjing was Qin Shi Huang was accepted by more and more people. Coupled with the fact that Yingjing had killed the Wu people, the Sword Council finally acknowledged Yingjing's identity with a 50% reluctance and a 50% reluctance. They publicly granted Yingjing citizenship and a large number of rewards to reward him for his contribution in maintaining the neutrality of Shanhai Pass. When Yingjing accepted the citizenship, he even held a large-scale ceremony through TV. During the ceremony, he publicly announced that he was willing to establish a fund with all the rewards he had received, to reward those ancient and treasured sword-bearers who were still fighting on the front line. At the end of the ceremony, he even announced that because he had absorbed Zhu Wu's blood essence, he would become the new Zhu Wu in 10 years at the latest. After becoming Zhu Wu, he would truly be immortal, and he would no longer need to turn back into a baby and be buried in a grave. Finally, Yingjing promised all the people that he would continue to provide protection for mankind for the next 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. Mankind would have an emperor sword-bearer who would never ascend. After such a big promotion, people all over the world cheered and jumped for joy. Some people even shed tears of excitement, shouting that mankind was finally saved. Long live His Majesty, Qin Shi Huang, and other such things. The popularity of this news overshadowed all other news. For a whole year, the topic on people's lips was Yingjing. It was just like when Trump was elected President of the United States. The topic of the people in the United States could never be separated from Trump. All in all, the biggest contributor of the Shanhai Pass battle, Guhan, was overshadowed by the clamor. This was in line with the thoughts of some of the higher-ups of the Sword Council. Therefore, other than a reward that was given to Guhan like Liuyan Ling and Ing Zheng, Guhan did not receive any other benefit. Most people did not even know who the real contributor was. Chapter 1049. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye 2.5 years had passed. Compared to the bustling Shanhai Pass 2.5 years ago, the Shanhai Pass now seemed very quiet. 2.5 years ago, there were more than 14,000 swordsmen in Shanhai Pass. There were battles on the defensive line every day, and the entire Zhou-Tian star formation was very lively. But now there were less than 1,000 people left in Shanhai Pass. This was the minimum number needed to maintain the heavenly cycle star formation. Almost all the ancient sword-grade swordbearers had been evacuated. Only a few ancient sword-grade swordbearers remained in the more important positions. As for the number of famed sword-rank swordbearers, it did not decrease. This was because every great heavenly cycle star banner had to be guarded by a famed sword-rank swordsman. This was the only way to maintain the stability of the great heavenly cycle star formation despite the large number of ancient sword-rank swordsmen being lost. Ever since it was confirmed that Zhu Wu's essence blood had been destroyed and that all the Wu people could not be revived, the humans, under the leadership of Guhan and Liuyan Ling, started to kill all the Wu people. The Wu people, who had lost their ability to revive and their great shamans, could not resist the slaughter led by Guhan and Liuyan Ling. 200,000 Wu people were killed in a year, and it was estimated that only a few thousand Wu people were left hiding in the dense forests. If the humans wanted to kill the rest of the Wu people, they would have to pay a heavy price. Therefore, after some consideration by the Sword Committee, they believed that the Magi in Shanhai Pass were no longer a threat, so they began to transfer the sword bearers away in batches. In the end, it became the current situation. Guhan also went from leading more than 7,000 sword bearers to less than 500 sword bearers. If not for the fact that the famed sword-level sword bearers could not be transferred away, the 12 grand shamans might have broken through the suppression of the great heavenly cycle star formation, and the humans would have transferred the last famed sword-level sword-bearers away. However, the famous swordsmen in the Zhou-Tian star formation had all been transferred away by the Sword Committee. Some of them had only been in Shanhai Pass for less than a year, but they were also transferred away. As for Liuyan Ling, after confirming that the Wu people were no longer a threat, she left Shanhai Pass immediately. She had only been in Shanhai Pass for a year and a half. What puzzled Guhan was that ever since they broke up that day, Liuyan Ling had started to deliberately distance herself from him. Not only did she refuse to accept any of his calls, she did not even look at Guhan when they fought side by side. It was as if Guhan did not exist. Liuyan Ling did not even inform Guhan when she left Shanhai Pass. She left on her own. It was hard to believe that the two had been in a heated relationship before this. Guhan felt a dull pain in his heart. He did not know why Liuyan Ling would treat him like this, but Guhan knew that the root of the problem must be with the Liuyan clan. So, Guhan had to make a trip to the Liuyan clan and find out the truth about the Black Tortoise. But before that, Guhan had to spend 3 years in Shanhai Pass. After killing all the Wu people, Guhan actually had nothing to do for a year and a half. This became a rare time for Guhan to relax. He brought his sword mistress around Shanhai Pass and perfected his swordsmanship at the same time. One should not underestimate this year and a half. Before this, Guhan had been like a clockwork machine, advancing without regard for anything else. Although Ling looked mighty and powerful, Guhan was already exhausted internally. His body was filled with all sorts of hidden injuries, both physical and mental. After a year and a half of recuperation, Guhan's entire temperament had changed. he had gradually become more reserved from the sharp and unparalleled swordsman. He had retracted all of his sharpness into his body. He usually looked no different from an ordinary person on the side of the road. It was hard to imagine that Gohan was an unparalleled and powerful swordsman. All in all, after dealing with the Wu people, Gohan had completely disappeared. Not only was there no news about Gohan in the real world, but even the military governor in the game did not come online again. Humans were forgetful creatures. No matter how famous the Admiral was back then, when he didn't have any new events, when there were other people with explosive news, humans would always be attracted by these new things and gradually forget about this person who had once caused them to gasp in surprise. That was why when a familiar-looking fellow suddenly appeared in a tea house in the game, no one around recognized that this was the Admiral who had once been popular throughout the game. Look, isn't that the Toad who eats black chicken white phoenix pills? Why is he here? Suddenly, a loud shout came from the tea house. It turned out that a person with glossy hair and the aura of a successful person walked into the tea house with 4 sword maidens behind him. This person was none other than the Toad who eats black chicken white phoenix pills, who had recently become very popular in the game. It's too noisy here. Let's go to a private room. Toad sat opposite Gohan, touching his glossy hair, and said with a silly smile, "It's fine. This place is pretty good." Gohan shook his head and pressed a button on the table. A few curtains automatically extended from both sides of the tea house, turning the originally public tea house into a rather small enclosed space. F***CK. Since when did this tea house have such an advanced function? Why didn't I know about it? Toad said in surprise. I think it's because you haven't been to a tea house for a long time. Gohan smiled faintly. Looks like you've been doing well with Ying. What Ying? We still like to call him Boss Yaoguang. Toad scratched his head in a simple and honest manner, then began to order all sorts of drinks for the 4 sword maidens beside him. Recently, Boss Yaoguang has mentioned 4 big goals to achieve, which is to make Yaoguang's sword faction the #1 sword faction in the game. We've been so busy running around, how could we have the time to come to a small place like this to drink tea? Is that so? Is Ying finally ready to make a move against the Stormy Wave sword faction? Gohan said in a slightly mocking tone. 3 years ago, he had put in a lot of effort to push Yaoguang's sword faction into the ranks of the top 10 sword factions. Who would have thought that after 3 years, Yaoguang's sword faction was already preparing to snatch the title of #1 sword faction? However, there was nothing strange about this. Yaoguang had long announced his true identity as Ying in the game, attracting a large number of fans to join Yaoguang's sword faction in real life. Yaoguang's sword faction's strength was not inferior to the Stormy Wave's sword faction. In fact, its overall strength was more than 10 to 20%. On top of that, Ying had already become an emperor sword wielder in the game, so it was only natural that he wanted to snatch the title of #1 sword faction. I say, Sour Popsicle, for the past 3 years, other than communicating with me occasionally, you haven't expressed any other intentions. Why do you suddenly want to meet me today? Toad asked curiously. I heard that you've become a famed sword wielder in real life. Gohan didn't answer Song Hama's question. Instead, he asked Song Hama a question. Song Hama immediately patted his chest proudly and said, "That's not true. I'm not as crazy as you, becoming a famed sword wielder in a few months. It took me only 3 years to go from ancient sword to famed sword. I, Song Hama, am one of the fastest people in Yuzhong City." Song Hama was right. Reaching the famed sword rank in 3 years was indeed one of the best results in the base city. Most sword bearers would need more than 10 years to reach the famed sword rank from the ancient sword rank. Song Hama could already be described as an unparalleled genius in just 3 years. You're already a spiritual sword wielder in the game. It seems that it's only a matter of time before you become one in real life. Gohan took a few glances at Song Hama's sword maidens and realized that they were all lively and full of life. Clearly, these sword maidens were real sword maidens. I forgot to introduce you to my sword maidens. Song Hama patted his head and began to introduce his sword maidens in the game one by one. I won't introduce Cast Cloud Iron. Her life was saved by you, Gohan. Brother Gohan, long time no see. Cast Cloud Iron was still tall and mighty, but she no longer had the carefree look she had 3 years ago. Instead, there was a hint of worry that only a little girl would have. And looking at her cautious attitude toward the other sword maidens, the source of this worry was obvious. After all, the Cast Cloud Steel was just an ancient sword maiden. When Song Hama was still an ancient sword-tier swordswoman, all the cores revolved around the Cast Cloud Steel. Naturally, the Cast Cloud Steel was one of a kind. But now, even in the real world, Song Hama was already a famed swordswoman. The core swordmistress had obviously been replaced by an even more powerful famed swordmistress. In addition, Cast Cloud Iron's tall figure did not appeal to ordinary men. One could imagine how depressed she was. It's okay. Look for me. I'll help you teach that stinky toad a lesson. Gohan smiled and nodded at Cast Cloud Iron. He said something meaningful, causing Cast Cloud Iron's eyes to turn red. It seemed like she had suffered a lot because of Song Hama. However, seeing how heartless Song Hama was, it was obvious that he did not realize this. This is my treasured sword, the Mountain Suppressing Sword. You guys didn't see it in the Jinyuan Garrison Manor Crusade dungeon. However, I'm telling you now, the Mountain Suppressing Sword is also my treasured sword in real life. Song Hama introduced the similarly tall and mighty Mountain Suppressing Sword. Hello, Mr. Military Governor. It had been more than 3 years, but the Mountain Suppressing Sword still did not forget the ferocity and strength that the military governor had displayed in the Jinyuan Garrison dungeon. She still had enough respect for Gohan. This is my famed sword maiden, the Darksteel Heavy Sword. How is it? It's amazing, right? It's also my famed sword maiden in real life. Song Hama proudly introduced. She's really powerful. Gohan could not help but nod. The sword maiden was ranked 3rd among the famed swords. She was the initiator of his chaos sword style. She had once been able to suppress his own sword maiden. Gohan did not expect Song Hama to be able to synchronize with such a sword maiden. This Song Hama was truly powerful. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.